Good morning. There are a few people already joined, so let's wait a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes before we start, so that will give enough time for others to join. Well, maybe we can go ahead and start. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for the workshop. This is a virtual grant writing workshop organized by Alliance for Research, Innovation, and Education and University of Bahrdar University. And this virtual workshop is hosted by the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, Iowa, here in the United States. So this workshop, it's a 2-day workshop, so it will run today and tomorrow, exactly at the same time. For people in Ethiopia, that will be search at the Ethiopia Marathon, so 4 p.m. local time in Ethiopia. Before we start, I want to acknowledge University of Northern Iowa for hosting this virtual workshop. We have an agreement. My name is Tilahun Abebe, by the way, and I work at the University of Northern Iowa. And we have a memorandum of understanding with Bahrdar University, and that's why University of Northern Iowa is happy to host this virtual workshop. And I would like also to acknowledge Bahrdar University. Bahrdar University has been a partner to AfRIE, Alliance for Research, Innovation, and Education for, I think now about 2 or 3 years. I think we passed over 2 years now. And this workshop is actually the second time that we're organizing. So we're very happy for their partnership. I would like also to acknowledge Rick Seeley. He's our manager here for the Learning Technologies unit or department at the Educational Technology and Media Services here at the University of Northern Iowa. Rick has been very helpful for setting up the webinar, and also he was my go-to person whenever I have some technical issues with Zoom and YouTube. So I'm very grateful for his help. And he will be with us for the first few minutes to make sure everything is running smooth. So this is the schedule for the workshop. So this is again today's workshop, today and tomorrow. There is only one minor change in the program on number 9, that will be for tomorrow. So number 9 was actually after the discussion. So we moved that up so that if you have any questions related to this networking and developing integrated research, that will be a time to discuss that one as well. So again, before we start the program, I would like to say a few things, a few for housekeeping. One is you will be using the same Zoom link and YouTube link that was sent to you, except the YouTube link. Right now, I think everybody can join in through Zoom because we don't have a lot of people right now. But when the number is over 500, I think Zoom automatically will direct you to the YouTube link. So use the YouTube links that I sent you, the revised one or the updated one that I sent you this morning. Initially, a lot of people had signed up, about actually over 1,400 people. And that's why we also thought we can link the seminar to YouTube so you can watch it live on YouTube as well. So because of the large number of attendees, your video and mic are turned off. You will only see or hear the speakers, okay? For you, if you have any questions, you're gonna have to submit those through the Q&A feature through the Zoom. And I was told also there is a way to do that on YouTube for those who are attending on YouTube maybe, but I haven't figured that one out yet, but I will be able, hopefully, to do that. Both of these are recorded, so we will go through that and we will summarize all the questions and hopefully we'll try to answer those during the Q&A time or as soon as we can. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna invite Dr. Yonas. Dr. Yonas Gizaw will introduce AfRIE just very briefly, and then Dr. Tesfaye Mersha will present the grant writing proposal, the ins and outs of grant writing proposal, and then Dr. Daniel Enquobahrie will present on just kind of overview of some of the major US funding agencies and some other Canadian and European funding agencies. You can see in the speakers here, some of them are in boldface. That means those are the people who will be giving the presentation. The others would be, the other people have just contributed for the presentations. Yonas, I am gonna stop the sharing so you can share your slides.
Can you see my slide? እንደምን አደራችሁ፣ እንደምን አረፈዳችሁ፣ እንደምን አመሻችሁ. Good morning.
Put it in a presentation mode.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, put it in a presentation mode.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm fixing a couple stuff here. Is it presentation mode? Can you see it better?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. እንደምን አደራችሁ, እንደምን አረፈዳችሁ፣ እንደምን አመሻችሁ. Those of who you are here in Western Hemisphere, in Europe, in Ethiopia and Asia. We have a couple of people from Taiwan and Japan as well. This is Yonas Gizaw. I'm from Purdue University. Also, I have another job at the Procter & Gamble company. I'm introducing to you the Alliance for Research, Innovation, and Education. This organization was created a couple of years ago in partnership with Bahar Dar University. They are our host, and who we are scientists, educators, engineers, technologists. We are either origin from Ethiopia or French of Ethiopia. All we stand for is to improve the quality of life of our people now and generation to come. We do that by improving the quality of education, the quality of research and innovation in Ethiopia and partners abroad. We are right now about 90 members of different disciplines. We have engineers and agriculture sciences, natural sciences, social sciences, computer engineering, and so forth and so forth. We have experts, actually, I cannot even spell out. So this resource, the majority are located abroad and few in Ethiopia. We are coming together to help people to grow and partner together for the future. Our vision is very simple: create a better opportunity for everyone by inspiring shared knowledge to achieve the fullest of their potential, participating to contribute the betterment of our society. When I refer to society, it is in Ethiopia or in Africa or across the world. But our primary focus at the moment is the betterment of our society in Ethiopia. Our mission is improving the well-being of our society now and generation to come through improving education, research, and innovation. These are the original founders. We call them founders because we came up together to reach out to multiple universities in Ethiopia and research institutes in various areas of in Ethiopia. But finally, we were able to secure relationship with Bahar Dar University. Thank you for its president, President Tekletsadik, and as well as his leadership team who have dedicated time with us to be able to pilot our mission, our vision to across Ethiopia. And Bahar Dar University is our pilot university. What that means is that we're going to learn with them how we can achieve our mission, our vision, and our goals. Once we learn with them, then we can expand across Ethiopia and further, if at all possible, across Africa. And I'm very confident that will come sooner or later. But we agreed to start small and grow bigger. We have a lot of ongoing efforts from the past to now. We are creating expert group, whether you are an engineer or social science, a physicist or a chemist or biologist, agriculture. We're going to create a user group or expert groups. We are implementing a short and long-term courses workshop. This workshop is a part of that grant strategy to give people a way to improve their research capability by bringing money and organizing their research groups. Your trainers today are well equipped and well trained and the top of their career. We have trainers both from the US and Europe, from right to left. You see them from University of Northern Iowa, which is our host today, University of Cincinnati, to Purdue University, where I come from, City Elizabeth, and University of Southeastern Norway, from University of Washington, University of Toronto, and the environment research in Germany. These are well-trained, highly experienced trainers. Please make sure you pay attention and utilize the training you got today. What do we expect the outcome of this workshop? We don't expect you to be the expert grant writer at the end of this workshop. However, we believe you will be able to navigate the process of application, identifying ideas and for potential funding agencies, and partner with your group, creating a small group discussions, how to write grant and assemble them the grant together. Send them, get funded, and improve your research and help your community. Those are our goal. At the end of the day, all we want is the betterment of our society through improved education, research, and innovation. I can tell you for sure, today, there are over 1,400 people registered. Hehowever, we probably get about 400 of them right now in the list. These people come across the country truly. We have people from Jijiga, Samara, from Afar, from Dredoa, from Bahardar, Gondar, Dabra Tabor, Dabra Marcos, Jima, Bonga, Walaga, Nemitz, from RC, from Addis Ababa, from Wollo, Dilla, Awasa, Almaya, name it. We have all of you here, and we are very, very much proud of you for you to join us and utilize this opportunity. We encourage you to visit our website, and it's under construction. We try to make it better every time. Please sign and register, and we encourage you to do that. With that, I'll pass the trainers to give you the next 2 days, and congratulations for you all. Amasagrano. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. So Tesfaye is going to start his presentation now.
Yes. Can you unshare yours first?
Yes.
All right. Let me share my slide. Put it in presentation mode.
Tesfaye, before you start, there are a couple of people who are having issues with the sound system. Attendees, make sure you can hear us. If for some reason you can't, send us your response on Q&A.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon or here in the US this morning. My name is Tesfaye Mersha. I'm here at the University of Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. So some of you mentioned in the chat that you want to get the slides. Of course, we are preparing all the slides and other teaching materials all together. We'll send after the presentation. So bear in mind, you will receive all the materials. So what I'm going to give you a highlight this morning is about what are grants and how we write grants, and some of the tips as a grant writer. I have so many setbacks, so many success in getting grants, and I will share you my own personal journey in this workshop. So the first thing as always do is learning objective. As Dr. Yonas mentioned, there are some basic things that we expect all of us to learn from this this workshop. You know how to. And in my case, I will give you some hint or some thoughts how to identify research ideas, and of course ideas are plenty. We always get ideas, but how to turn those ideas to research concept, hypothesis, and then to a fundable thematic approach or a project. So, and again, the most important thing is not just the idea or the grant, but how to really follow a request or application guidelines. And as I mentioned, I will give you toward the end some of the my own personal experience in grant writing. So some of the things that we're going to go through this morning is about grant idea, generating ideas, what are the, what are the menus or the required stuff to generate idea, and how to find grant mechanisms or sources, how to develop proposals, and of course submitting proposal. And then once you get the grant, and the next step is, of course, you have to manage the money, because unless you manage it well, you will not get it back, or the funders will take it away. And I will discuss some of this, but most importantly, some parts will come after me and tomorrow. So there will be some really detailed presentation for each of these. So I think, as I always like to start with the idea of grant indicators. The most important thing when you look of grants are always, successful grant award is linked with your profile, your publication, your bio sketch, or your resume. So unless you have a strong publication record, is sometimes it's very, I would say, very difficult to get grants. So always when you think of grants, back it up with your own publication record. As you can see, in the US, this bubble shows the proportion of publication across the globe. You can see in Africa, there are really tiny piece of the world publication contribution. So this really goes proportionally. The amount of money goes to the fund to research. If you look, the United States is over 40 billion for research. So you can imagine how much research money goes to Africa or Ethiopia, so that to generate this kind of publication. If you look even with an Africa standard, as you can see here, the most of the publication comes actually from Nigeria or Egypt, Kenya, or South Africa. So when you look at Ethiopia, it's over 100 million population, the second to Nigeria, I believe. So the publication record is so tiny compared even as small countries like Kenya or Uganda. So we need to change this. Unless we change this trajectory, I don't think it's good enough to talk about grant, because publication is the best and the most indicator of success for a grant. So having said that, what is a grant? So let me give you just, this is a very common thing, maybe everybody knows, but we need to pay attention that grant is a conditional gift with strings attached. So it's not on the other hand, it's just to say it's not a donation. So when you get a grant, when you submit a grant, the funders are not giving you the money for the sake of your interest. They have a vast interest of the idea that you are proposing. So it's stringent that you have to answer to the funders. So, the funding source identifies a problem, or you will identify the idea originates with a grantee. Sometimes the funders will say, okay, we want to study, livestock, human interaction. So you need to propose on that area. On the other hand, you may also have your own idea. You want to develop a microbiome or something in Ethiopia. So the funders may be interested to see how the microbiome ecosystem in Ethiopia versus the Western Hemisphere. So you may have the idea, the funders may be interested in your idea. So either way, the funder may give you the idea, or you may have your own idea. In any case, the funding is for a specific purpose, and it's a time dependent. It's a certain period of time. Most importantly, as I mentioned, it's not a donation, and the money has to be utilized for the purpose it has to be planned. It's not, you cannot use it for any other purpose. So that's why it's not a donation. So in terms of funding, who's funding, sometimes you may be interested who is funding actually, in some cases in the US, now in many countries, at the federal level, there's a big money, as I mentioned, NIH, National Institute of Health in the US is a federal funding agency. So it has a big amount of money. So it's over, as I mentioned, over $40 billion per year, $43 billion per year in this year. And there are over 54,000 grants supported within a given year. So you can see the federal government has a big resource to support scientific discoveries. On the other hand, regional states like the state of Iowa, who's sponsoring this workshop, they have their own local money to support some local issues. And the same is the case of the state of Ohio here. We have also local money from the state governor resources. For example, we recently got a genomic research grant from the state of Ohio governor's office. So there's some local, but the money is really small compared to the federal. So, but sometimes it's not just the federal, there's also private funding agencies, as in this case, like foundations, private foundations, and corporates, like, when I say foundations, like the Melinda Bill Gates Foundation and others, and the corporates like the Pfizer and other companies, they also support. Of course, their interest is very different. So you'll get this slide. I'm not going to go each line because I want to cover some other important things. But you may think of it in submitting or in looking grant. There is also private and public sources. So why grants? So in this case, see. Okay, why write a grant? The bottom line is you have an idea that you are passionate about it, but you need resources. An idea by itself has nothing to do in accomplishing those ideas because you need resources. But because of that, you need money, and usually research ideas should drive funding. It's not the reverse. Because of you have funding, you cannot really do research. You should have idea in order to start funding. So there are, as I mentioned, funding could be internal and external. But these days, as most countries, maybe including Ethiopia, internal funding is very limited. That's why we need to look external funding. For that purpose, we need to write grants. So who can write winning grants? So sometimes, grant writing is not preserved, or it's not a privilege for a few or selected. So anyone with good training and ideas and stamina to persistently or consistently look for can get funded. So there is no substitute to that. You have to work and be smart enough to identify sources and go for that. So so anyone can write any grant. So the first thing is identify the problem, and you also need to identify appropriate funding agency, and of course you need to look at the requirements and of course start writing ahead of time. I will come back to that. So the bottom line is grant writing is a science and an art, because you have to have some scientific understanding of the process, and also the art of doing the grant writing. How to frame it, how to work around the different components in a way that reflects your art skill. So I think there is a lot in this regard to say, but I will continue on that. Why do funding agencies give grant? So as I mentioned earlier, it's not a gift. but they have a mission. So, for example, NIH in the US, they have a mission for public health. So the government, the Congress appropriate funding for the research for public health. So that NIH has a mission to address public health issues. That's why we are requested or were asked to submit a grant, because the mission, the funders, when achieve their own mission, they can't do the research because they are not expert, but they have the money. So we have to match the resources with the scientific community. That's why they fund grants. So what are the key good grantmanships idea? What are the what keys you want to know about grantmanship? The first thing before you do anything is understand what to do. Of course, this is obvious. If you are a psychiatrist or a pediatrician, you know what to do, and what comes next is how to do it. The problem, but how to do it, when to do it. Time is a factor here. For example, in this year and last year, if you have a project related to COVID-19, this is a perfect time to get grants. So compared to if you write a malaria or other things. So the time is always good for grant writing. You have to be really time your application, and of course you have to plan it well. You have to have really passion and commitment, and there's no substitute for commitment and passion in writing grant. I think this is the most important thing to attend whatever you plan to attend in a grant, and for that matter for any scientific or life. So as I mentioned earlier, so some of the basic tenets of the grant writing, as I mentioned, understand the agency mission. If you are writing for NIH, understand what NIH is looking for. If you look for NSF, understand what the NSF mission. If you are looking for CDC Africa, you need to know what African CDC is looking for. So each organization or each funding agency has their own mission. So we need to stick to that mission when we apply our grants. Of course, the core idea of grant is similar, but it's somehow specific to each agency based on what they are looking for. So what are the elements? I will go through some of these really very important things in a second, but we should have good ideas. As I mentioned, ideas, there is no substitute. The good idea is almost half gone to grant process. And then good timing, as I mentioned, writing COVID or some other important current AfRIE issues is important. Good presentation, there's nothing important as well, as I mentioned, good presentation. Unless you present it in a very readable and easy to navigate way, reviewers, which we discuss later, will have a hard time to understand your grant. If they don't understand, then it doesn't matter what idea you have. It is stop here. And that's why grantmanship, you have the idea, everything is in your favor, but good grantmanship is really important. Of course, you need to have good reviewers. So the judges are here to see how well you frame every step of your grant writing. So reviewers has to really acknowledge and appreciate what you are trying to achieve. And in some cases, as anything in life, you should have also good luck, so that everybody is in favor of voting in favor of your cause. So to give you a very overall view on this, develop your project story. You have a goal, and of course you need to show the gaps in knowledge, capability. What is the gaps? In your background or justification, you need to tell me. I right now we're 100 feet And if I do this, we need to get to 1,000 feet. Now you have to show me what the existing gap, and if I give you the money, how can you fill those gaps? So it's really, we need to show that the money is here. What is the gaps? The gap in knowledge, that gap in practice, or anything is important. Not only the gap, sometimes you can propose, you want to go to the moon, but do you have the knowledge and the hypothesis, the research question? How will you do that? Those are really important things that comes next each other. It's the chain of questions that comes, how you address those knowledge gaps, how you frame it in a hypothesized way. How do you test your hypothesis and approach? Once you have those hypotheses, you can hypothesize, as I mentioned, to go to the moon. But how do you achieve that? Do you have a good approach? Do you have the resources? Do you have the collaborators? How it is different if you cannot, how it's different from the others? So these are critical steps. I sit in an NIH review panel as a reviewer. This is the most important part, because you can show knowledge gap, you can show hypothesis, everything, but how do you get that done in a very specified time that you are allocated? Of course, the significance, if you achieve those, if you go through those approaches, achieve the goal, what is the significance of your project? Do you change the child, birth rate, or do you change the pneumonia rate, or do you change the milking status, cow production, or the farming system? So those are the bottom line. Everything we said depends how significant your projects are, which we call it impact in the NIH system. But I think these are really important points you need to pay attention in your write-up, any grant write-up. So again, this is a chain of process, from planning, writing proposal, identifying potential funding sources, and always you need to contact those funding sources. If NIH is you are interested with NIH, there is always contact person or contact email. You have to contact them and ask more questions. They are there to support your because their mission is to get some good ideas, because they have the money, but they don't know how to do it. So there's no harm to contact those people and ask questions. And you submit the proposal, and of course, sometimes you may not get the money at the first time, and you revise. So we'll come back some of this later. So again, this is a very important slide, even if you don't see anything except this cartoon, but it's a step-by-step process. You start from a little, you cultivate your idea, progress well in a very stepwise, but a very connected way to get the results. It's not, you do it one day and then you stop writing. Writing is, as if most of you wrote a thesis or grants, everything. When you see it again, you'll see some typos or some things that you don't expect you did that. So it's a work in progress. There's no perfect person in my experience that knows everything. Always it's a step-by-step process. So what are the general tips of comments? Take sufficient time. There is no substitute of rushing, by rushing. You have to take time to prepare a good application. And in some cases, avoid using too jargons, too many acronyms. And because, as you may know the field, in the review panel, there are 20-25 people, and they don't know what you are interested in. If you put all acronym in a page, then you lose their interest. If you lose, the outcome is just negative. So so budget, Professor Joseph will go through tomorrow some of this, but I'm not going to. But in this case, font size, even the font size matters. You don't need to put different fold every page. You have to be really have uniform font and typo. Take very seriously typo. That shows how sloppy you are. So typos and sentence construction, and use a clear, simple and simple declarative sentence. Avoid complicated word. When I was young, I thought writing a very complicated word or new words were useful, but now I know that's actually against me. So try to make your statement very clear that can be understood by a third, fourth grade graders. So, for example, when these are very, very really minor, simple examples. So, in some cases, you may be each funding announcement, there's a page limit. You may be asked 6 pages for R21 or 12 pages of R01. So, tell me if approximately or about, in terms of meanings, they are very similar, but this takes much smaller space than this one. So try to economize and use a more direct terms than a relatively longer one, because one thing, it will cut the space limit. I mean, you get more space to add some other important words, and on the other hand, it will be very, very direct to readers. And as most of you know this, but usually readers, as reviewers, I want to see an active voice statement than a passive voice. The new drug caused a decrease in heart rate. The new drug caused a decrease in heart rate. So it's in a passive voice form. If you change it to an active, the new drug decreases the heart rate. So this is much more easy for me to understand than the first one. At the same time, you have less, you reduce the number of words, and it's more direct. People can understand it. So this seems minor, but as a reviewer, this is a big deal to understand, because each reviewer has really few minutes to go through your grant. Again, there are some other words, I can say at the present time, due to the fact that, at the present time, you can say now, due to the fact that, you can replace because. In the event that, there are some very, tight words that you can express the same without losing the meaning. You can express the same thing in a very economized way. So, that's all about presenting your reviewer-friendly approach. Organize and use it. In some cases, I don't like to write from bottom, head to bottom without a space. So for that reason, you can have subheadings, you can have the breaks, use topic sentence for each section. Sometimes agencies or funding agencies may have their own suggestion. And above all, you need to have some white space and between, so that, give reviewers a break so that they can analyze what your thought process. Otherwise, if you have the whole page without a break, the first thing that comes to my mind, even without reading, is you don't provide me good material, so I'm not going to be good for you. So give a very readable, friendly or reviewer friendly material. So coming back to idea, I think your idea is your product, as I mentioned. If you are in any job you do, your idea matters. But in grant writing, your idea is, of course, your product. You have to develop those ideas to resistible or resistably fundable grant. So as I mentioned, grant by itself is not, idea by itself is not going to turn to grant. You have to really turn it to a fundable idea. Some of the characteristics of new product, I would say new product is your grant idea. Obvious relative advantage. You have to show what is the advantage if I buy your product compared to somebody's. You may have the same product, because when you submit a grant, people apply for the same grant. For example, in the study section I'm sitting, there's 120 grants for the same announcement. So there is only about 7 to 10% of success rate. So in order to be in that 7 to 10%, you have to give me an obvious advantage that you aren't present to compared to what others can provide. And you have to also, sometimes you have to show me whether it's compatible to the existing usage. In some cases, if you introduce completely new idea, and especially in the context of Ethiopia, where maybe there's no, so in that case, if the technology is completely new, so it's very challenging to adopt. For example, if you are you have ideas that requires electric power, if you are interested to do that technology in a very remote, no electric power, then that idea is not going to work. So you have to make it compatible with the existing system. And of course, give the opportunity for the consumers testing. Consumer in this case is, the funders. Opportunity to observe its newness, and you have to show me what's unique. There is innovation section. You have to show me in the innovation section what is new about that. And most importantly, try to present it in a simple way, not complex. The more complex you write, the more difficult for funders to fund your idea. So always start with good idea, as I mentioned. So start with a question. Poor idea will never be successful regardless of how well they are packaged. In some cases, you'll be a good writer. You'll have really everything we said, but the idea is much important, because without good idea, you can package it, really put it in a very good way, but without that good idea is not going to play. And at the same time, unfortunately, good ideas are often not funded because they are not packaged well. I think this is a paradox. In some cases, as a scientist, we all have good ideas, but we're junior, we don't have good experience, and we cannot package it in a way that reviewers like or funders like. So that's where we can put now this type of training, how you package, how you really expose yourself, because I know everybody has a good idea, but the thing is how we convert that idea to a funding idea. Then how you improve the packaging. So I also mentioned timeline is very critical in grant writing. You can't write a grant, if you see something for September, now it's for October, November, in 2 months, you cannot really put a good grant. So that shows if you are planning to submit a grant within a month or two, that shows, the lack of commitment on your side. You have to have time and effort to develop a fundable grant. So you need time, and you need to develop a timeline that can really help you to develop the grant. Others can review and help you to refine it. Because if you write a grant in a very shallow way, eventually reviewers will know it, and you will not keep those reviewers, because there are 20 people, somebody will catch what the problem is. So you should have time. If you have enough time, you will catch all, you will address those issues. And of course, you need time to get endorsement support from your department, your universities, the government officials, and others if necessary. So unless you get time, you cannot get all these supports in a good time. And most importantly, submit your grant well ahead of the deadline. These days, everything is online. So if you stuck last minute, it's very hard to submit on time. If you miss that deadline, you are not going to submit in paper or other form. So the best would be to submit a week before the deadline, so that even you have, if you have any problem, you will basically have a chance to resubmit. I mean, try to fix those issues. So this is, this is a timeline. Usually we, as a grant writer, I personally like a minimum, if you are working in your field, a minimum a year to 9 months to a year is required to develop a grant. This is actually a very minimum timeline. Usually people need a year and a half to synthesize their own idea and to reach, planning phase. There are many phases. I will get the slide. I'm going to go each step, but you have a planning phase, writing phase, and then submission phase. So all these steps, really a minimum of 9 months to a year is required. So you can't really put a grant in as you run. So the other point is finding the right mechanism. Dr. Daniel from University of Washington is going to talk about this. I'm not going to tell you the funding mechanism now, but I would say that each funding organization has their own requirements. For example, this is a very tiny slide. I don't think you can see it, but at least here, and if you are right, NSA proposal, here is a requirement, the type of materials you need to submit. If you are writing NIH, this is the type of material you need to present. And if you are writing USDA, Department of Energy, and National Environmental Health, there are different ways, outlines. What is common in all this is that the idea. Your idea is critical, and it's one way or other. Whatever you write goes in the same and different parts, but the order may be different. So you'll see it in the slide when we package this, but as well as Dr. Daniel will give you more on this. So understand criteria to evaluate proposal. This is again, Dr. Daniel is go through this process, because you need to know how your grant is reviewed. What are the criteria? Which one you really need to focus? Those are really key, because you can't write good idea, but unless you really emphasize on the point that they are looking for, that's not going to play well. So what makes an idea, an idea stable for a grant is, fitness of the proposal to the problem, truly innovative. The concept, from, reviewers who usually evaluate from most impressive idea to less impressive. So, whether your idea is truly innovative, it's really very innovative, which is, breakthrough in some cases, or it's an expansion of the existing concept. It's we know the idea as a concept, but you are really expanding it. That's it's a good point. Or the other thing is incremental in advance. It's a horizontal, a little bit in advance. So and the last one is a bad concept. So these are, we always try to achieve for innovative idea, but in some cases, expansion of the existing concept is also good in some of public ideas. If you are writing epidemiology, those are really, existing idea, but you want to reach out more people. But that's again, okay. It depends the funding organization. So again, to the scoping of your research project. So what is mostly noted is that don't go broad and shallow. So as a young people, junior people, most people try to, go broad. They want to cover everything they see, but that's not the way life goes. And at the same time, because they go broad, they don't really go deep. They are very shallow and offenders. They want to see very clear vision. So what is required, as you can see in this cartoon, is go focus and deep. and so that you have an impact. Whereas if you go shallow and broad, I don't think nobody notice even you exist there. So you have to really go focused so that everybody notice your impact and the funders know where their money, their grant is spent. So always, this is, for junior people is very hard. I understand. I have a challenge on this, but unfortunately, life is not, talking too much on the broad concept. If we can't solve the world or even in a city, one city problem, you can't solve the problem of Bahar Dar, Wallaga, or Juma, or Gondar, or any Desi in one project. You can't go solve one. You have to have focus and go to deep. So, if you scope broad and shallow, it increases risk, and you cannot really achieve your goal in a very fixed way in a short time. So again, this is I don't want to go read for you, but the cartoon tells you all what I want to say. So the key elements of developing fundable ideas, be knowledgeable, understand your own field, really critically important. Understand your own or related field. Science is changing every day, and for my own experience, I always look literature, PubMed or other sources every week, once or twice. So it's very amazing. Even in a field, in a specific field of my own, there is hundreds of publications per week coming up. So unless I update myself to the existing literature, it's very hard to get a new idea, fundable idea. It may be a good idea, but it's already done. So you have to be really match what is timely and accurate. Be creative, look for potential power with other field. No, this is the most important thing. What in my own field as well. If you look at public health epidemiology, and you can look at the same thing in animal husbandry. You can look parallelities in different fields. It's not. Every field is very connected. You should think of one field has its own interest in its own depth of knowledge, but it may be completely new in a different area. For example, human genetics and plant genetics. These are traditionally very different areas of expertise. But these days, because of the genomics revolution, the genome-wide association and all others, either human or plant or animal genetics utilize the same methodology. So now there is a transferability of ideas, knowledges from field to field. So my message is, don't be afraid to look other literature. If you are doing human research, look animal research. If you are engineering, construction, or other things, look at agricultural and other things. So there is no boundary these days. Everything is coming together. Be thoughtful, as I mentioned, devote enough time and be open. I think the most important thing, and again, is, science is a teamwork. I'll come to that, but be open, share your idea with your colleagues. You have to share, discuss with your friends, your mentors, your departments, your idea. There is nothing you can keep your idea and be successful. Successful scientists are those who share their idea, grow with the idea, and cultivate and share and collaborate with others. So those are really important points to develop your fundable ideas. Again, if not funded, try again. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are 120 grants in my study section. There are only 10 or 9 grants supported. So it doesn't mean the journey stopped there. You need to really try again and again. At some point, you'll be successful. That's why you have to be persistent and determined to achieve your goal. So how do you find their research perfect, or I would say research questions idea? in some cases, sometimes as a young person, you and anywhere else, you always think that ideas close to you are not, good enough or innovative, but that's not the case. Your careful observation of, if you are a doctor, medical doctor, your patients are the source of idea. If you are farming, doing agriculture, farming community are the source of idea. So really, you have to look very closely where you are instead of, looking ideas from somewhere else. If you are teaching, students are a great source of idea, discussion with the students. So there are places where you can get idea where you don't think that's a great idea. But of course, idea by itself is not going to work. You have to develop it, make it more hypothesis driven. But there's also databases. For example, in the US, the US NIH, the National Institute of Health, they have a database. We call it Reporter. If for the sake of time, I'm not going to click this, but if I click this link, it goes to me a database where you type your field. If you are studying genetics of allergy or genetics of hypertension, then you got all the projects that has been done in that area. You get the abstract and some basic ideas, including the title, and that will help you. Oh, okay, somebody in North America or in Europe did this. Why don't I frame this in my own setup here in Ethiopia? So ideas can be also found using databases, in this case NIH database. This is for NIH funded grants, all NIH funded grants, probably in millions of grants you will find in this website. So this is where you put the word, your term, and you click search, and eventually it really generates all type of projects based on your keywords. And this is you can go through. You can see, click this one of the grants, and tells you what is the project title, the abstract, and who is doing, which university, and what the money, all details. So if you try to look at this and get some motivation on this. This is the abstract I mentioned. You got this abstract, but think about how you do it in your own context. Of course, this is, give you some idea, but doesn't take you where you want to go. But, it's where you can get some idea. So I think in this case, the bottom line is, before you can even think about applying for a grant, you must first identify the need. And someone other than you actually think needs to be addressed as high priority. Unfortunately, whenever you think some idea, it seems you are the one in the whole world thinking about, but there's other people who trend like you or who think similar to you. But we have to look at those review publications and other grants so that you can better fit the mission of those agencies. So as I mentioned, how we convert those research questions to a hypothesis. So critical criteria for good hypothesis, it has to be feasible. As I mentioned last time, a few minutes ago, is feasibility. If you can propose to go to the moon, but is it feasible? Can you do it? Is it interesting? That means, is it impactful or is it innovative? And novelty, whether it's, it changes the paradigm or the current situation, is it novel? And in these days, is it ethical? If you want to do research in human, is that possible to do in human? If you are, embryo transfer or some other, unethical issue, that's possible. It could be a good idea, but is it ethically acceptable? And is it, of course, relevant to the current situation? So these are criteria when you think of your hypothesis. Well, there's a linear progression from your idea, your program statement or gap statement to create your objectives. Once you have objectives, you go to the central hypothesis. The objective of this project is this. We hypothesized, okay, what do you want to test? what is your null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis? And then based on that, what are your specific aim? What are, 1, 2, 3 you want to achieve? And then what are the expected output? So these are, really circular thing. It goes feedback each other because there's never stop from revising, or the output will generate a new idea and you come up with a new project, and it goes throughout your career. So, how you frame critical needs, don't assume one has every thought of your idea. Your idea is unique, or at the same time, there are some other people may have it, but you always assume your idea is very unique to your station, especially if you have a demographic issue. If you want to do it in Bahar Dar, then that's a unique environment setup, and that's to address those assumptions, your tests. So you want to test your assumptions, what are the anticipated questions, and what are the guidelines. So these are project goals, methods. The Professor Joseph will go through tomorrow about this different aspects of grant component. So here I would say about the SMART rule. When you propose your objectives, I think the first thing is you have to be very specific. I think we already discussed how deep and specific you need to be. Clearly concise, variably interpretable, and one outcome. You can have multiple outcomes, but if you have one outcome, that's most impactful. Measurable. What is measured? You can't just say, okay, I want to see this. Actually, you have to say, I want to determine. You have to have a measurable outcome. And of course, as I mentioned, you have to achievable and relevant is the need based off the need of the funders and the community, and timely. As I mentioned, every project has time and specific time to get it and to renew it. So you should really focus what are the timely questions you want to address. As here I mentioned proposal goals and objectives, but I think you will get the slides. So what are the guidelines for stating the problem? It should be brief, simple, focused, and limited in scope. As I mentioned, you can't really put a long list of scope. You have to have a limited scope. The difference is you will have a long-term scope or long-term goals that can be broad, but for the project, you have to have a limited scope so that you can achieve within the funding period. Usually funding is for 5 years or less, so you have to have achieved those goals in 5 years. And each of your idea has to be really work together, flow logically. If you want to propose, animal husbandry, the idea that comes all should be related to animal husbandry, if that is the case. Because if you have really ideas that are not flowing together, then it's very hard to navigate for an investigator. So you have to have a logically, synchronized project idea. And I think in some cases, I would say that sometimes people like the word characterize, but in my experience writing grants, characterize is a very loose term. You cannot really test it directly in an achievable way. What is most common and useful word is to determine. This has a direct, really translatable way to reviewers and readers. Or you want to establish or determine, and those are really good words because words matter in grant writing. As a junior person, sometimes you may, as I mentioned, you want to go, shallow and cover everything, which gets you a level of overly ambitious. So really keep focused and keep it simple. and that comes with experience, but discuss and share with others, senior people, so that your project is really realistic and you can achieve it in a given period of time. So what has already been done is a field, and again, when you look at the key questions to address, you need to explore what has been done in the field. Why is this work important? Why you are the most important person? So, these are questions you need to answer in order to address those key questions. So build a case for your proposal, make it visually appealing, for the reviewers. Cultivate or captivate the reviewers by placing emphasis to them. I would like always to say, sometimes I would like to emphasize again some words again and again in a grant, so that the reviewers is not going to miss those by reading two, three times. So that's the way you need to make your case directly communicate with the reviewers about your grant. So again, as I mentioned, I think this is my third time to say it, keep it very simple, avoid jargon, remove or define acronym, and use avoid using sound bites, and bring the reviewer up to speed, repeatedly. So tell them the story. When I write a grant, I like to tell them a story from A to Z instead of starting from G and go on, because they don't know about what I'm thinking. I have to take them. I have to really grow like growing a plant or a seedling. You have to tell them the story so that it's like a baby. You have to see the development. As a reviewer, I want to see where you start, what you want to go, and what you want to achieve. So as I mentioned last time, a few minutes ago, not every proposal gets funded. So you have to submit a number of different proposals. In my own experience, probably I submit 5, 6 or more grants every year. Sometimes I get funded one of them, sometimes may not. But the generally, as a scientist, we don't never stop from doing it again, because unless you do it, nothing will change. And by the way, when you're not getting the money or the grant, you don't need to get mad. Rather, you need to be appreciative of the reviewers. They give you the time for you to read your grant. So keep in mind, they are helping you to get the money, but unfortunately, the ideas, they didn't get it well. So what I always say is, once I submit a grant, I never look it back. I just, look at different new grants, how to submit a new grant. So think about as if you never submit a grant. So the time will tell you, but don't look again about your grant submission, because you never know the results. The best thing is to move on to a different grant ideas or collaboration. So finally, there are 10 rules of grant writing. The first thing is, know the literature, know your audience, and follow your direction, state your hypothesis. Don't be sloppy, as I mentioned, typos and other things. Demonstrate consideration of alternative ideas. In some cases, we may write that the sun rises in the east. But we know that the sun always rise from east. But in grant writing, you have to consider what if not. So you always need to put alternative ideas, in your writing. So and at the same time, you have to acknowledge the limitation of your proposal. I know we write a grant with good idea, with good intention, but we never cover everything of that idea. So we need to add limitation of the proposal. And that is, again, important. You need to get independent review from collaborators, from friends, from seniors. So I think it's important. You need to show other people so that what they feel, and obey the 3 C's, concise, clear, and complete. Those are really important and terms. And finally, don't give up. This is a keyword in my talk. Don't give up, because everything, you may be successful one time, but not many times. But you have to keep on. Don't give up in grants or in life. So I want to stop here for a few minutes and then continue the discussion. So why don't you take a break for 10 minutes? Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Yes, yes. Thank you. That would be great. So we're going to meet, what, 20 minutes, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Or you want to make it 10?
10 is good.
Okay, in 10 minutes, everybody. Thank you.
All right, can you go ahead and start?
Yes, it's time.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's get started. In the break, I've seen very, very good questions, actually very important question that probably will have a discussion. But before I forget, one important question was why we need to include the limitation of the project. I think this is very important. And in reviewing grants and in my own grant, that sometimes make or break your grant application, because any idea is not perfect. And you have to indicate what are the limitation of your project, because of you use this method, you haven't used a new method, or because you didn't address the whole nation, the whole country. You are limited doing this research in Jimma, but whether that reflects the whole country is questionable. So those are the kind of limitation you have to indicate, but you have to back it up with alternative strategy. And what are the methods you want to address those limitations? So one thing, you have to show there is limitation, but at the same time, you have to tell me how you address those limitations. So there is a way to fix that question. You don't need to put the whole problem, the whole limitation in a negative way. If you put that, you don't get the money. Actually, the limitation, you have to use it as a strength, because you want to do this way in the next round, or you have this alternate method to address this limitation. But it's a very important question. It is very critical to be part of the grant, especially if you are submitting NIH grant. NIH, by the way, supports the developing country, including Ethiopia, the Fogert International, with Dr. Daniel will talk later. But I think this is a very important question. Okay, moving forward. I think I talked to in length about ideas and how we make ideas and packaging and everything. But these days, research becomes more collaborative. And because of this nature, actually the science now, it is called a team science. It becomes more science. Collaboration is not just mere of collaboration. There is a school of thought, which is a team science methodology. So we'll go some of those collaborative ideas in this next few slides. So in terms of a definition, team science is a collaborative effort to address and scientific challenge that leverage the strengths, experts, of professional trained in different fields. So pay attention. Expertise in different fields. So when you create a team, which we go through in the next slide, there are certain characters, traits, or aspects you have to look. By creating people coming together, it doesn't create a good team, but you have to look at some of the required items, why and how you create team. So as I mentioned, now is the science of team science. Actually, there is a program which offers training in this area. So it's a new interdisciplinary field which aim to better understand the circumstances that facilitate or hinder effective team-based research and practice, and identifies the unique outcome of this approach in the area of productivity, innovation, and translation. So it's basically a new interdisciplinary field. So it's interdisciplinary, but in a what new way? So what is a team? People working together in a committed way to achieve a common goal or mission. The mission is the same. They want to reach the same goal, but we bring different expertise to achieve to achieve those goals. So It's mostly in an interdependent manner. It's not you need somebody because you need him, but how much you depend on that, and that person depend on you. So it leads to a shared responsibility. So usually people in a team science come with a complementary skill. You have to have a complementary skill. One is a biologist, the other is a statistician, one is a clinical scientist, all these different expertise, environmentalist, or all these things come together. So they have a complementary skills to achieve those goals. So how you build a team? So it's called the ABC of teamwork. The attitude, behavior, and cognitive state. So these are really important. What is your attitude, behavior, and your cognitive state to create those things? These are utilized in forming, building a team in a team science approach. So as I mentioned earlier a little bit on the team composition, first of all, individual who value working in a group. Some people, but unfortunately, they may not be a team player. So those are sometimes distractors. So individuals come to the team, they play in a constructive role and together. So that's important. And the other thing is group composed high ability members who can learn, reason, adapt, and solve problems. We have to learn from each other. If you are a plant scientist or animal scientist, we need to open to learn from each other, because as a team, we need to be in the same page to achieve the same goal. At the same time, if we are not open to learn, that's a challenge. So we need to learn, reason our ideas to the other team member, and adapt and move on in solving that problem. So we need to have optimistic rather than pessimistic view. And otherwise, if you are pessimist, then you have a negative impact on the whole goal of the project. So this is really, we need to be very, very optimistic or very due diligent in creating or in formulating our team. So in creating our agenda as a team, we need to sort out the prior works. Professor Joseph will go through about this in more detail, but I think whenever you define your agenda as a team, you need to show your prior work, what's the current project, and what's the future project, and what's the long term of the team. So those are really a very continuous approach to show, as I mentioned, it's growing like a baby. You have to show me what have you done, what is support your idea for this project, and what's your project, and then what you want to achieve, where you want to go, and eventually what's the long term, probably a little broader view. These are really important to show me that you have the stamina to go through all this. In a collaborative hierarchy, as most of you know, usually in my early age, we are mostly unidisciplinary. So everybody's an island. If you are a physiologist, you are the only person in the whole Ethiopia. I remember my time in Alamaya. So there are people who they are the only person known as the only one in the country. So the same as, if you are an animal breeder, maybe you are the only one or something like that. So this is a unidisciplinary way, which is not going to help us as we move in this connected world. So now the next level, at least much better, is a multidisciplinary. There's some connection, give and take in different fields, but in a more interdisciplinary way, you have a more shared vision. Here is give and take. Here is more shared vision. Whereas in the current view, this is more of transdisciplinary. You could be animal science, you could be plant science, you could be fisherman, or you could be engineer. we work together for the same mission of humanity. So it's more a transdisciplinary way. So there's different concepts here. I'm not going to read them, but this is really important to think of how you see yourself in this process. For example, I like the idea of One Health. Most of you in human or in public health know this idea. Recently, there's One Health concept. So the idea is One Health is stating, we all share a common vision, common future. Whether you are in animal husbandry, in animal science, in human genetics, or human epidemiology, or environmentalist, we all work for one thing, which is for human health. So this is a more transdisciplinary way. We have to learn from each other, and we have a shared vision. So I think I encourage most of you to learn and think about a One Health idea, which brings different discipline. It could be engineer, it could be public health, it could be environmentalist, whatever the different. They have a role to play in this One Health concept. So why we need this team? This is a cartoon. Basically tells you, as you have a diverse team, if I think I would stress this, if you manage well, you can see the productivity goes skyrocket. You have really high productivity because everybody brings different things to the table. So there is a productivity is really high if it's managed well. As I mentioned, this requires to understand the team role, positivity, positive energy. If somebody brings a negative energy, then you don't see this productivity. Of course, it goes down completely in the reverse way. So if you are a homogeneous team, if you are, think the same way, all human science, human genetics, all animal genetics, if it's more homogeneous team. If you manage well, of course, you'll have some productivity. But diverse team, on the other hand, as I mentioned, diverse team here, highest possible productivity. If you don't manage well, actually it's a recipe for failure. So that's why we need to understand what team is. It's a science by itself. How to manage conflict resolution, what everybody brings to that table, so that the productivity actually keep rising, so that others learn and prolifically grow their own research idea. So how to build and sustain your team? I think this is from a National Cancer Institute, from NIH. They have really a guide, collaborative environment. So, the first thing comes when you create a team is we need to build a trust from one each other. We are all together for the same mission. So there's nothing wrong to say I don't know. So, but trust is important, like a family, like a community. Vision, we should have a common vision for where we want to go. Unless we have common vision, then everything stops there, because if I see west, somebody see east or the different direction. So that's a negative energy that I showed you the previous figure. And self-awareness, we need to be aware of our challenge limitations. Nobody is perfect in this in the science, especially in science. We all learn every day. Nobody knows. Even I do my own work for the last 20 years, I still learning every day. So nobody knows everything for sure. So we need to be self-awareness and leadership. The leadership is important, and all these are really important when you think of building and sustaining. We can build a team. That's sometimes easy. We can call each other for a coffee and build, but how to sustain? I think that's important. Sometimes you see number of organizations like AfRIE. There's a lot of others say we provide this, we support Ethiopia, and this was the other. But in 5 years, 10 years, you may not hear some of them. So how you sustain whatever your team? So this is really important to think about in team. So idea research team, this is a slide from Dr. Yalom. I like this because it's really important to take this home. So each with unique skills, everybody has something to support for the mission. So is everybody appropriate for the project, including all required skill expertise. So you could have a team, but also the team has to be experts of the project that you are planning. It could be very complementary, but is that complementary not your field, but in terms of your project as well? So it's important, we need to have that. If you have redundant people, the same kind of expertise in the project, that's another recipe for failure, because I don't want to see two people doing the same thing in a project, unless it's a career development grant where, a junior person is mentored by senior people. So you could have multiple people with little complementary redundant expertise. But if you are writing grant, then you have to have really less redundancy and track record of working together. When you submit a grant, it's important you have to show the team has been working in the same area or some capacity for some time. So if you are just call together for today in a few days and then put a grant, I don't see you have done before this thing. And my answer would be, I don't know they worked this together before. So you have to build the track record that you convince reviewers. So this is a chat message, a chat box message, if you can. What are important things to consider before initiating or accepting an offer to collaboration? So what do you think you want to, if I invite you, to collaborate with me, what is your expectation? So maybe this was a poll question. We couldn't have this access today, but that's a thing that we could discuss maybe in the future. The other chat question is, in your experience, what is the most common reason teams fail? The first thing, poor leadership. Number two, one or more disruptive personalities. Number three, unclear vision or goal. Number four, general lack of enthusiasm and lack of resources. I think you can rank them, or I think these are all important points to consider why teams fail. So finally, what are the 10 rules for successful collaboration? The first thing I would say is, don't accept any collaboration. Accept collaboration based on merits and based on, what role you play. Accepting for collaboration for no reason or just simply accepting is not really helping the person who is providing or offering you for the collaboration or for yourself. So you need to have a due diligence in accepting a collaboration. And decide who will work on what task. You should tell what are the job description or the areas that you are be assigned, and you need to stick to your task. What is my role? You always to ask in collaboration, what is my specific role? Of course, we are in the same ship, but you need to know what are really your specific role to play. And most importantly, I think, again, be open and honest, knows your limitation and your strengths, and be honest and be bold. Sometimes people get it. It takes time for people to understand some good ideas. So you have to be persistent as far as you have good ideas, and respectful and get respect. So that's really human nature. Communicate very well. Sometimes we in our inner side, we talk we understand a lot of things, but unless you communicate to reviewers in this case, or each other, there will be some miscommunication, misunderstanding. We need to cut that misunderstanding at the start. Then the team will grow as we shown in that figure. sometimes when things are not working well, we need to have a conflict resolution mechanism, and most importantly, consult experienced people how you solve those problems, and keep going in those good efforts. As I mentioned, this is by itself a course offered by different institutions here, our institution, as well as by Harvard Business School. So there's also books here I mentioned listed here. So I think there are different ways I mentioned here from a research perspective, but teams can work in multiple fields, in business, engineering, all kinds of areas. So now we have the team, we have the idea, and we wrote the proposal. And the first few minutes will be how it's going to be reviewed. I'm going to give you just a bird's eye view, few slides about how your grants is reviewed. The first thing is, once you submit the grant to funding organization, in this case, NIH, there are five important funding criteria, scoring criteria that will be provided to each reviewer. The first thing is, I will be asked, what is the significance of your project, the approach you followed. As I mentioned, approach is critical. The investigator, the investigator is important because who is the leader of that project? Do they have the team work together, and do they have preliminary results? How is their resume or bio sketch? Do they have publication? I can tell you that if you don't have publication, it's very unlikely you can get a grant. You may get some donation from other government donation, but writing a grant without having your own bio sketch or publication is not going to help you. And the environment is where you work. The job is important, and finally, whether your project is innovative or not. So who are the reviewers? Reviewers are accomplished, dedicated, knowledgeable. They are really very knowledgeable people that work in this area. Some of the reviewers I reviewed in this grant review are Nobel Prize winners. They are really high caliber people, but at the same time they don't have time. So because they don't have time, you have to give them a very simplified grant, a very simple readable grant. So this is the review process. Your grant is reviewed this way. These people are sitting down and reading about your grant and evaluating. And in the end, you may get, once they decide, NIH give you, in our case, like 3 to 4 or 5 million grants for 5 years. So these are people who review your grant at the end. So, these are things that Professor Joseph will go through tomorrow. Otherwise, you'll get the slides. Because of time, I will not go through through each of this. But I think I want to emphasize that you have to have an impactful application so that reviewers will not really resist or say no. You have to tell them this is important project. They have to say, oh yeah, we want this grant to be funded. This is the scoring system. So from 1 to 9, as I mentioned, you have to get 1 or 2. In the current funding system, you have to get 1 or 2 in order to get funded. So in summary, you need to a good project question idea. You have to impactful, and not only impactful. It has to be deliverable. You have to have a deliverable at the end of 5 years. You have to deliver what you want to deliver. So that means it has to be feasible, which is related to your training, expertise, and your data, whether you have already done in that field, so that I can trust you can do this. And as to collaborators and teams, we mentioned we need to. I want to see your synergy, and also you need time to develop all these different things. Again, simple things. the fonts, typos, white space. These are really minor things for us as researchers, but very, very important to review. So I just want to emphasize that how important is even the simple things, font size in grants. So this is a common reason why grant fail. I'm not going to go through the list. You'll get the slide, but poor grant writing, beside the good idea, you have other things you have to address in this listed here. And also there are good reasons, characteristics of successful grants. So well prepared, time, well planned ahead of time. These are really ideas that helps you to be successful in grant writing. Finally,
okay, I think we're gonna have to stop the test.
Yes, I am done. So finally, reading materials, you will get these grant writing books, and if anyone, we can send you some of this, but I think with this you will get. So the last thing, I got this slide from Dr. Yalom is, you need to have, stamina. Success doesn't come overnight. That everybody knows the story of Haile, how he, goes through the mountains of RC and become the leader of his own, chosen career. Now, this is not a simple one thing. And each of you here, think of yourself as Haile, how he grew up and where he is now. So that's what I feel, success requires repeated effort in our side. So finally, I thank you everyone for attending. Happy to take questions after, in this time. Thank you again for attending.
Thank you, Dr. Tesfaye. We will have a Q&A time. So if you have any questions, we'll discuss those later on. Now I would like to invite Dr. Daniel Enquobahrie to talk about funding agencies. This is going to be a very short summary of the funding agencies. So if you guys have any specific questions, again, we'll try to address those later on. So can you unshare yours, Tesfaye?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
And you can hear me well, I hope, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone. I'm Daniel Enquobahrie. I'm very happy to be here with you, and thanks for joining. I'm going to go over some, funding agencies and grant mechanisms. This is going to be kind of a roadmap that I'm going to do and share with you. The slides will be shared, so there's a lot of material in the slides, so I'm not going to go into each one of them, but I'm hoping that the resources that I'm going to share will be helpful, as you look for potential grant mechanisms to support your work. Just before I start, just want to say a few things about myself. I'm faculty here at the University of Washington in the Department of Epidemiology, Health Systems, and Population Health, and lead the maternal and child health program. My specialty is in epidemiology and public health. I've been doing research in that area for some time now. My background is in medicine and epidemiology and genetics. So what we'll be doing today, again, as I mentioned, this is going to be kind of showing you a roadmap of all the potential opportunities that there are out there. I'm going to start by giving you some overview, background. I'm going to talk a little bit deeper about the National Institute of Health, which is the largest funding agency here in the US, and go through some of the mechanisms there. And then I would highlight some of the others, including funding in agriculture, public health, medicine, and so forth. I'm going to talk about European funding agencies, Canadian funding agencies, some foundations, and then important potential industry, academia partnerships. And then I would conclude by sharing some potential local funding sources. So that's what we'll be doing. Again, you know, I'm going to just go through all of these, and you can get the access to the slides and the details by looking at the links that I'm providing in the slides. All right, so in terms of, you know, some general, you know, approach to finding grants, there are, you know, a few things that we can look into. There are a number of international agencies, including the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, and so forth, that fund grants, where you can have some opportunities. Professional societies, you know, in every country almost have some, at least, either limited or, you know, larger extent, you know, funding opportunities. International organizations, universities and academic institutions, these are all potential sources for funding. You can get, you know, knowledge about these from, again, websites, word of mouth, and some grant searching tools. And there are a few that are indicated on these slides that you can look into. There are very important checklists, you know, that could help you in terms of identifying and then preparing, you know, grant submissions. First is, you know, learning about the goals and priorities of the funding body, the funding agency. That's very, very important, as I'm going to talk about a little later. You want to make sure that your eligibility requirements would not will not include you, and you are eligible to apply. You want to make notice of the deadlines, of funding, limitations on funding. Again, you know, want to make sure that you are okay with those limitations. You want to check if there is any cost sharing that is needed or matching funds, and whether where you can locate that. I want to check whether it's a short or long-term grant and whether you need a host or not. And then very important, as Dr. Tesfaye, you know, indicated, you want to make sure that you are very clear about the application procedures. Now, these reminders are very important, and I'm going to repeat them at the end as well. You must really know what the institute and agency wants and is mandated to fund. So, as Dr. Tesfaye indicated, you know, this is not a donation. The agency, the institute funding the project has a need that, you know, it feels that you will, you know, satisfy, and therefore you really want to know what they want to fund. It's not about what you want get funded. It's about what they want to fund, and so you want to align your, you know, proposal in the way that it aligns well with the funding agency's mission, and this is very, very important. Always try to position your idea to align to the mission of you know, the organization and make it relevant. And then lastly, be aware of the announcements and the procedures that are needed, you know, for the application, and this is very important. Many grants we see don't get even reviewed just because they did not follow the appropriate procedures. So these are important concepts. Now let's talk about some of these funding agencies, and I'm going to start, as I said, with the National Institute of Health, which is the largest funder by far of, you know, health-related grants in the United States. So the mission, as shown here, is to science in pursuit of fundamental knowledge about nature, behavior, living systems, and application of that knowledge to improve health and reduce burden. And so this mission is listed in the link that's shown.
Daniel?
Yep.
Can you closer to the microphone or
Okay.
talk a little louder?
Okay, I will. Better? Is this better?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the National Institute of Health has several institutes, more than 20, closer to 27, and these fund different types of research as shown here. So you want to identify those. There are different opportunities that it provides under different announcements, parent announcements, programs, request for applications, and request for proposals. These are, there are different mechanisms, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit. So the parent announcement, which is by far the most common way that NIH funds research, is investigator initiated. There is no specific, solicitation for the application. There are standard deadlines 3 times a year, the winter, spring, and fall, to submit this grant. And this is, you have an idea, you don't look for announcement, you just submit for funding. So that is by far the more common way of funding that NIH follows. There are what we call program announcements. These are specifically for particular interest area, and so depending on this, in the interest area that NIH wants to fund, it releases announcements. And so these are announcements. Based on that, you can apply. These are in general have a better chance of funding than the parent announcement, because a specific amount of money sometimes allocated for this, and you can see what NIH is interested in. The request for applications is even a more specific research area with some set funds that are allocated for funding some programs. And again, if you are interested in that specific area, you have a much better chance of getting funding from these RFA announcements. However, they are competitive as well, because there is a specific set of funds that is set aside for these. So these are different mechanisms. And then there are the request for proposals. These are contracts, and I have an example that is shown here, and you can check the link there. This is for contract research opportunities when NIH has some need, and they release these contract research opportunities for conducting research. So in terms of finding what the funding, the right opportunity is for you, these are various resources that could help. So I encourage you to to check these out. And particularly, I want to highlight the third bullet point, which is find grants opportunities. And I encourage you to sign up. It doesn't take anything, but every week they will send you potential grant opportunities at the NIH. So these are ways of identifying a specific opportunity that you can apply for, compete for. As I said, there are many institutes and many mechanisms. Here are some examples. This is an alphabet soup, as you can see, but these are very specific in terms of their goals. So you just need to be aware of each of these. To make sure that you are aware of this, you should really know the NIH language and look into this. So here is some explanation of some of them, by no means comprehensive. So the research grants are denoted by the R series. Research projects are U, career developments are K, trainings are T, program projects are P, and so forth. So one of the very important things to note is how to better understand how NIH kind of classifies these mechanisms and how it kind of solicits proposals. So the submission process is very streamlined. So if you want to apply to NIH, again, there is an ERA system that it follows, and you can look at the link to see the details. And there are forms that you need to apply for, to use for the application. And so this is very important. And I strongly encourage you to do a very, ahead of time, ahead of the deadline, because there are a lot of pieces to it, and you really cannot rush it. So you need to give yourself enough time to make sure your application is properly organized and addresses all the questions that need to be addressed. Otherwise, it won't be reviewed, and that is going to be very sad because you would have spent a lot of time and resources. So that's why I'm adding this slide that describes the NIH language, all the activity codes and the glossaries and acronyms. So if if you are considering NIH, I would just encourage you to start from this, understanding better the NIH language. Now I'm going to switch gear and talk about the funding in related to agriculture, food and agriculture, and so there are different organizations that fund research related to agricultural science. There are federal agencies, international organizations, and foundations. So those are shown here. I'm going to go over a few of them. The U.S. Department of Agriculture provides leadership on food, agriculture, natural resources, rural development, and all other related public policy, and therefore it supports research work in this area. One of the arms that it uses is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which is an arm that supports research, education, and economics. So they provide announcements and funding. Some competitive requests for applications are shown here, from the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. As an example, here is one area of funding. You can see, in plant health and production and plant products, they had an RFA. Of that, there are also specific ones, and you can also choose which one may work for your specific area of interest. In this case, I'm the highlighted one is a plant breeding for agricultural production. And when you go there, you'll see all the details of the funding opportunity and see whether it matches your interest. Now, for the NIFA applications, here are the different checklists, and this is a reminder that each of the agencies that solicit applications have their own, checklist of materials that you need to submit. And here is an example from the NIFA application checklist. Now we'll go to some European Nordic grant opportunities. So I'm going to talk about a few of them. Here is one, Horizon 2021-2027 scheme, again, which funds research in that area. The Erasmus is the EU's program to support education, training, youth, and sport in Europe. Again, all the links are in the slides for you to learn more about each specific one. The Norwegian Aid for International Development, again, the Norwegian Agency for International Cooperation, which here I've been funding work in Ethiopia. SIDA, again, has been funding a lot of work, some understanding. The Danish International Development Agency and the GIZ, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. And so all of these agencies, including this German Academic Exchange Service in the UK, fund programs in their different interest areas. And so we need to be cognizant of that and see if any of these interest areas match our areas. Now, in terms of Canadian funding agencies, the federal research funding goes through three. There are three arms for the federal research, from the Canadian government: the CIHR, the NSERC, and the SSHRC. So the funding types also vary, similar to what I described for NIH. It could be either investigator-initiated or specific to build specific capacities in some areas, or applications of research in improving policy practice or procedures. As I say, CIHR, the website is shown here. It includes broad agencies, about 17 institutes, as shown here. And the focus, again, is very broad in terms of health. The CIHR, again, it promotes international and global health collaborations. I've highlighted here the link that may be of interest specifically to you. But there are also other potential mechanisms for the SIHR. The other arm, the NSERC, is shown here. Again, it has got a global arm as well. So that's why I'm bringing it again. I can look into the link to get more details. And the same with the SSHRC. Other funding sources that are available include, again, this is in Canada, the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Grand Challenge Canada, and MasterCard Foundation. So these are all potentials, and again, the details for these are also here. Again, I'm not going to go into details, but just wanted to show you some examples of successful programs that were implemented in Ethiopia. So hopefully this would serve as some motivation for the potential to access some of these resources from Canada. And so you can go deeply into by using the links, look into some successful projects to get an idea of what type of project may be successful and may be of interest to both the funding agency and your efforts. And then lastly, the MasterCard Foundation, which is based in Toronto, also funds research projects, particularly related to finances. And the goal is to advance learning and promote financial inclusion, particularly for people living in poverty. And then also there are examples of some successful projects that were funded from this organization as well. Next, I'm going to talk about some foundations and agencies that could be a good sources of funding. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is one of the largest, if not the largest, philanthropic organizations that promotes people's healthy people's productive lives. And there are different areas that are of interest, particularly the four that are shown here: the Global Development Program, Global Growth and Opportunity Program, the Global Health Program, and the Global Policy and Advocacy are all targeted at foreign countries to the US, and so there are significant investment in Africa and specifically in Ethiopia. And you can see some of the level of funding that they have, they have already provided. It's over 54 billion. It's like a couple of years ago before COVID started, and now it really is much higher. So it's a major source of funding. So here is a link for how you can access some opportunities from the Gates Foundation, and so you can follow this to see what they are interested in, funding. The World Bank is another foundation, primarily works with the government. But these government organizations, they may have contracting activities that you can get engaged in. It has also some affiliated groups that also independently fund potential projects. The Food and Agriculture Organization, again, specialized agency, leads the effort to defeat hunger, also can provide direct assistance. It also helps specifically in identification and submission of direct assistance proposals. And they also issue call for proposals that fund projects. USAID, I'm sure I've heard of this one. So this is a US government-based international development effort, and that has that also funds multiple mechanisms, projects and grants. And so again, this is something you can check in. I included one specific, country-based grant funding opportunities in Israel, and there have been some collaborations there as well. And again, this is one example of some specific country-based associations that you can access. I'm going to switch gear and talk about industry and academia partnerships. Also in the chat box, some questions about involvement of industry in research, and these are very important for a number of reasons. It's important for translation of research to practice. It can help us access some unique resources and stimulate commercialization and entrepreneurship. So it is it is a very important role that can it play. However, there are some challenges because the language that are being spoken by academia industry may be different. Funding models may be different, and there are some issues of intellectual property or confidentiality. However, recognizing the importance of this industry and academia partnership, the federal government here in the US has granted opportunities through the National Institute of Health. So these are called SBIR and STTR goals. So if you are in the industry and want to collaborate with academic organization and want to obtain funding, you can look into these opportunities, and you can see they fund at a very high level, about 5,000 grants every year. And here are some specific differences. I'm not going to spend time on these. You can look at them at your convenience, but just know that there are actual mechanisms that are funded by NIH for specific areas that are of interest to any of these departments and institutes that are shown. And so this is something for you to explore. And here are a couple of examples of funded opportunities for academia and industry collaboration. So I've included a couple here, including one in Africa, that you can look at as an example when you think about applying for funding through this mechanism. And here is one, for example, in related to pediatrics diagnosis of tuberculosis, and this can be implemented in a low resource setting, as we have. Here's another example on sickle cell disease. In sum, again, the main comment I have here is that these funding opportunities for academia industry collaborations are available, and therefore and they have some utility. So we can really go for for these opportunities if we are in a scenario where we can take advantage of them. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about some local and African funding sources. And admittedly, this is a very short list, by no means reflective of all the vast resources that you may have around you. But the goal, the thought I have here is that to encourage you to look around where you are for these opportunities. And what I've tried to do here is provide links to where you may look into for different types of opportunities. So there's the African Academy of Science, the African CDC that provides some funding in health-related work. The Grand Challenge in Ethiopia. This is actually a collaboration of the Ministry of Health in Ethiopia and AfRIE. And so they have some funding opportunities there. There is funding. I know a number of you are potentially interested in short and long-term academic programs. So there is a link that you can use to see if there are any funding for academic program opportunities that you can apply for. There is a partnership opportunity with the USAID. So this is something I touched on earlier when I talked about USAID. So that is also another opportunity. And then the UNDP SMART Grant Program. So these are some potential opportunities that are available locally and in the African setting. And then just to go over the reminders I showed earlier, because this is very important, and I'm hopeful that you appreciate from my talk that I've been specifically mentioning the potential importance, the importance of really understanding what the institute or funding agency wants and is mandated to fund, because that is critical for the success of your application. So understand your funding proposal, understand your ideas as described by Dr. Tesfaye, and make sure they align, alignment of the need of the agency institute and what you want to achieve, is probably the recipe for success. Without that, it's not going to work. So try to position your idea to align to the mission and make it relevant, and then make sure that you learn all about the announcements, the eligibility requirements, the limitations, and the procedures of the funding opportunities. And that is very, very important. And I really want to leave you with this for important aspect of identifying an opportunity that you may succeed in. And then finally, I want to acknowledge Dr. Tesfaye Mersha, Dr. Tilahun Abebe, Dr. Milion Tardeg, Dr. Shegaw Mengiste, Dr. Tesfaye B, Dr. Joseph Beyene, Dr. Enquobahrie, Dr. Abebe, Dr. Kasegn, Tekletsadik, and Dr. Yonas Gizaw, for providing me the slides that I used for this presentation, many of them, for arranging this opportunity and for the wonderful effort that they have put into arranging this massive effort. And I really hope you can make use of these information that we provide in this workshop. And I'll be very happy to answer any questions you have in the discussion session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniel. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, this is a time to ask questions and participate in the discussion. I have tried to summarize some of the important questions raised, submitted rather, in the Q&A section here. I will try to summarize some of them and raise those so everybody from the panel can chip in with their answers. And then in a few minutes, I'll be leaving, so I will make Dr. Tesfaye Mersha to be the host, and I will send the questions by email so you guys can read those and kind of answer them as you go. One of the there's a lot of questions, but there's a lot of also similarity in the questions. So I've tried to again summarize them as much as I can. So one of the question that was raised was about the recording. A lot of people asked about whether we will get the recording and the PowerPoints, and we will do that. We just couldn't send it early before the meeting for you guys before the workshop, but we will send those as soon as we get them organized. There was one question related to funding sources that Dr. Tesfaye mentioned in his presentation. He showed one example, the NIH report site. There was another question whether there are additional sites like that that people can search. Anybody knows? Maybe you guys can address this.
Yeah, I can start. That's the one I provide is for NIH, and that's health related. I also see some comments in the chat about what about other fields. So if you look NSF, they have also their own database. It depends which field you are. If you are European related projects, I'm sure Dr. Shegaw may comment on that. There is another database. So each funding, especially the big one, they have their own database. If you want to the foundation like Bill and Melinda get, you need to go to their website. Actually, I sent one about NIH. You can even register. They send you every time the new grant mechanisms, announce it. So Bill Gates, I signed for Bill Gates website, and every month or every now and then they send me when there is a new announcement. You just need to sign and be in their mailing list. So the one I showed you is an example. Otherwise, if you look at the USDA, I'm sure they are their own. It depends which field you are, but for sure, maybe others can comment, but there is a lot of database to look at.
Hey, Tilahun, እያለም ነኝ። ጥያቄ ያየሁት ጥያቄ ያለ ያልተመለሰ እንደምን ዋላችሁ እንደምን አመሻችሁ። የአንድ ኢምፖርታንት ጥያቄ ያለው asked by ፋንታሁን አየነው መኮንን. Where do you start? The question asking is, do you start by writing the grant itself, thinking about your own focus, or would you start by looking for the funding agencies? Where do you normally start in writing grants? That's the question he raised. And if you could address those.
Yeah, Fantown is a very good question. I think the funders always, they have their own requirements, and you cannot fit whatever their requirement is, because you have your own expertise and your own career. So what I would like to say is, first, identify your strengths, and then cultivate your strengths and develop your idea. And then there's always somewhere your idea can fit. So it's always good to check, those funding agencies in your field, what they are looking for, and try to improve your publication record, collaboration teams, and everything. You can on the back end, you can really develop those relevant items to meet their demand. But eventually, it's your expertise, and you have to explore your own thought process and then go to the funding. But the funders are very diverse. For example, in NIH, National Institute of Health, I can submit to multiple funding or agencies depending my own my research focus. So if I focus on asthma and genetics, I go to NHLBI, like Daniel mentioned. If I want to focus on international health, like infectious disease, I go to NIAD or Fogarty International. So, but it all has to come with your own expertise. But at the same time, I wouldn't, rule out looking what are funders looking. So it's just balancing your expertise and looking their funding, what is a portfolio, what kind of research they are looking for. But it's a very good question.
Yeah, I think it was important to mention that in short, እኔም የገባኝ እንጀራ ለሚፈልግ ሰው ዳቦ ልሽጥልህ ብትለው አይገዛውም። ስለዚህ መሸጥ የሚፈልገውንና መግዛት የሚፈልገውን ማገናኘት ያስፈልጋል. The most important thing is to align your expertise with the interest of the funders. If that doesn't, it's not, if it is not aligned, it's not going to work. So that is a key component there. Another question I see.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think maybe I should put my video on, if that's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can't see you, but we can hear you. Oh, now we can see you from Canada.
Can
Yeah,
you?
we can.
Yeah.
Do you see my flag?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Just wanted to echo what both Tesfaye and Yonas mentioned. When it comes to grant writing, broadly, you can think of two approaches. One, the question is, who initiates the funding mechanism, or who initiates the idea in terms of the need? Most of the time, the investigator initiates the need for that, addressing that specific question. So those are called investigator-initiated proposals. So as Tesfaye mentioned, once you know your expertise and your area of research, you can write your ideas, or you can think of your ideas before you start writing about them, and then identify the broader funding agency, and within the agencies, the different sections. So if we take NIH, the National Institutes of Health, as an example, there are many, many institutes within NIH, depending on the specialty. And then, you look at what their mandate is and align your question to them, you go for it. So that's one approach. The other way around is the funding body themselves. They have some money that they want to dedicate to a particular focus or a particular question. Then they will instruct you. If you want to apply to us, this is what we expect from you. So I think that those two approaches are key for me to think about how much time to spend before you submit a grant, before there should be alignment. So investigator initiated versus funding body initiated. So I just wanted to highlight those distinctions. Thank you.
And there is a question on, I think it's Yeshwas Unatu asking, I think this has been answered, a question on whether it's outcome versus impact. What is an outcome and what is an impact? So I think Yonas has answered it, and I also added, but if you want to chip in, please. The outcome is basically the result, and the impact is what comes after the result and the broader consequence of whatever result is coming. So that's basically how you see it. Let's say your proposal is to increase fish production. Now, the result is to increase fish production, but the question is, what is the impact of actually increasing fish production? Then you can look at from the broader community, nutritional benefits and so on. So, and economic benefits of the people working. So you can see it from multiple ways. That's my understanding. But if others would like to chip in, please add impact versus outcome.
Just one dimension. I agree completely with what you said. So the broader versus the immediate result. And also in terms of timing, impact typically is long-term implication to a community, to society, whereas outcome is, by the time you are done with the research, whatever you see, that immediate result is, to me, the outcome. As you say, fish, that's outcome. Okay, so what is the implication, in particular, the long-term implication to producing fish? We could say, sustainability in terms of food security, health, and so on. So there is that time component, the way I understand it.
Then if you continue a little bit on peer review, Sanai Zarihun has asked, can you explain the peer review? How does it work? And then how do we create innovative concepts, how to develop them? That's the question you're asking. If you go ahead, Dr. Yusuf.
Sorry, you cut out. Did you ask me or?
Yes, yeah. If you want to address it, it's how does the peer review work? That's one of the questions. How does the peer review work? And how do we develop innovative ideas and innovative concepts to apply for grants? That was a question from Sanai Zarihun.
Maybe Tesfaye can go first because this is something he has covered before. I'm happy to add. Tess, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit. The review process is, it's a multi-stage process. The first thing, as I mentioned, probably you'll see it, probably rush a little bit, you'll see in the slides or in any grant writing book, is you submit your proposal. There's always deadline to submit to funders. Once it's in their end, there's a grant management or program officer who look your grant about the area where it fits well. I mean, they call it SPO, Sponsor Program Officer. So those people look the abstract or specific and find out reviewers that match to your grant across the country. In some cases, I have seen people from Canada invited to review a grant from Europe. So if somebody expert like Joseph from Canada, some of the grant is related to his field, he will be invited. There's a big database around the world. All the scientists, most known people they have in their database. So they invited those around 20 people for one study section. There are probably thousands of study sections. As I mentioned, there is about over, 100,000 of grants submitted every year. So 20 people will be invited. And among those 20, 3 people will be assigned as primary, secondary, and tertiary review for each grant. So your grant will end up to 3 people who can read from end to end, from beginning to end. And those, the rest of, 17 of the rest of the panels, they receive your grant, but they don't have time, or they don't pay attention to the details. So then there will be a time, like, reviewers will be given 30 to 30 days, a month, to read your grant, and there will be a meeting. These days, as you all know, it will be like this in a Zoom, but in the past, we all get together at the NIH in Washington, DC for 2 or 3 days to review those grants. So your grant, first of all, the grant will be ranked based on the score those 3 people gives. It will be ranked from, best to worst. And then only the top 50% will be reviewed by 20 people in the meeting. So what happened is the reviewer who assigned as primary, the first one, will present in the place of you. He will act like you. He presents, summarize your goal, your aim, everything, what you intend to do. That's why you have to communicate to where he understands to present your cause. And then he will address the weakness, the strengths, all what we discuss about, whether you mentioned the mutation or what's the alternative strategy as a writing, all these problems he will discuss. And the second reviewer will address it very briefly, not as extensive as the first one. And the third one will be asked if he has additional comment. If he has a new ideas, he will add on the first and second. Then once the 3 people discuss, it will be opened for the 20 people, the rest of, and including the 70 people. The 20 people all together discuss about your grant. The rest of the people will ask those 3 people about things that they are not clear enough, and they should defend in place of you. And then in the end, some may agree, some may not agree, and everybody is asked to to score your grant again. The 3 people score it at the beginning. Now all the 20 people will score all together again, which is the final score. So that is the bottom line is, if you get the final score by 20 people, a good score, it will be on the funding side. But if the 20 people is not, pursued by the discussion, then they will not be on the funding side. But there's a lot of details. I'm not going to go to the details. Maybe Joseph can add on that.
I think that was a very comprehensive response, Tess. So I don't have much to add. Yoalam, I thought there was a second component to the question. Can you please remind us again?
How to prepare and basically how to develop an innovative.
Okay, the innovation part. Okay, so we will have more to say tomorrow when we discuss different components of a grant proposal. One of the key aspects is innovation. And maybe we can defer it to that, if that's okay. Or there's innovation, sometimes it may not be easy to define. I have more to say tomorrow, so that maybe I will leave it at that. But
I think that's fine.
If the person who asked this question is not coming back tomorrow, they can contact us. We'll provide some answers, and they will get a copy of our slides from tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I just one point. When you talk innovation, it doesn't mean you have to really create a new wheel or a new, it is how you package and how you make it a distinction, what is on the status quo. If people are, using the same methodology now and again, if you improve it an inch or a little bit, so it's innovation, the way things change. But as Joseph mentioned, you will discuss more, but don't take this word very seriously so that you don't think you have innovative idea. All what our ideas are innovative. It's just how we put it together.
Yeah, that's correct. So the reason I am deferring it to tomorrow is sometimes just because you want to show there is some innovation, we may make some mistakes. There are some common errors. We may exaggerate that we think is innovative, but probably we haven't really surveyed the literature properly. And the reviewer know what's innovative about it. You think it's innovative. So there is a fine line in terms of how we frame and how we sell this to our reviewers. So that's why I think we'll need to go a bit further tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have answer.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think there is another question that says, the presentation seems to be a little bit skewed and focused more on natural sciences area. And the question is, is there or are there funding agencies and resources for fields? Can you comment on that? That's a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Joseph, you want to go? Okay, I can say, I think, at least from what I presented, it's more, how you really craft your proposal. It doesn't matter which field. There's a commonality in all areas of writing a grant. Idea, wherever you are in natural, social, or any field, it starts with idea. The idea, of course, would be subject specific. And then all these mechanics of grant writing, whether you are in a different field, it's just stay there. Of course, there is some specifics. We didn't address it here, but if there is an interest on that, we can even have a specific subject matter people to get on that. But maybe, Joseph, you want to add on that?
Just a little bit to add to what you said, Tess. It's unfortunate in a way because both Tesfaye and I happen to work in the health area. So most of our examples would probably end up being in that area. But by any means, that's not to indicate that there are no opportunities in different other disciplines. So for example, earlier, Dr. Daniel gave us a whole list of potential funders. And when I know it was too much maybe to digest in this presentation, but he's going to send you his slides. You'll see there's a wide variety of funders for pretty much every type of research you want to do, depending on your expertise and interest. So, for example, I can speak about the Canadian example. That's where I am. So what is called the Tri-Council, the three big funding agencies fall under health sciences, natural sciences, and social sciences and humanities. So these are the three big ones. But there are also other funding agencies as well. So definitely, if you see examples from us just repeatedly around health sciences or natural sciences, just because that's what we're interested in. But certainly there are other avenues, and I would encourage you to go through what Dr. Daniel presented in terms of opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to add to this, in the US, of course, health-related research is funded by the National Institute of Health, which is NIH, but fundamental research is funded by the National Science Foundation. Agricultural research is funded primarily by the USDA. environmental research is funded by the EPA, primarily EPA, or the state, what they call them, environmental and fisheries offices fund those research. Department of Energy funds most of the genomic sequencing of many organisms were funded by Department of Energy. And you can, even Homeland Security funds, development of computer systems, all kinds of, if you are interested in spyware and things like that, that's area where they do. So there are many funding agencies specialized in different areas. It's endless, really. You need to dig on the based on your interest. I am funded from the Department of Education, and my funding is purely on educational work. It's not natural sciences or social sciences. And then I have also funding from the National Science Foundation, really purely biology research. So you can get funded from multiple agencies, and it all depends on your ideas and your expertise and interest. So, and as I know, for example, USAID at one point, I went on to talk to them at the US Embassy. What they are funding was childhood education, women and childhood education were the primary area they wanted to fund at that point. And if you had a proposal in childhood education and women, that's basically gender-related topics, that's what they would fund. And following what they fund every year, and their priority is key. But they do fund. I know the Bill's Foundation, Get and Bill's Melinda Foundation, that's one of the areas they fund is, I don't know what they call it, the big idea. If you do more on malaria, that's the area where they fund. Malaria is funded, but also hunger and agriculture area. I know people are funded from Ethiopia on working on maize, working with other countries in I think like 3 or 4 countries in Africa. So depending on your interest, you actually can get funded. What I don't know is really purely like language funding and so on. I don't know. But education, if you are interested in education, there is, I'm sure, opportunity to get funded. And embassies in Ethiopia, by the way, also fund and link universities with funding agencies in their countries. A visit to the embassies would always help. What kind of funding do you have is a question you should ask always. And I think that's a good point to start.
Just, Yoalam, very quickly, there was a question, a follow-up in the chat, asking, can you tell us about opportunities for engineering and technology? So in the Canadian perspective, engineering and technology falls under that NSERC, NSERC, that Dr. Daniel mentioned. So as I said, these are the 3 big funding agencies. CIHR is the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, just like the NIH in the US. NSERC, NSERC stands for the Natural Sciences Engineering Research Council. So engineers, technology researchers are also part of that. Probably my guess is the National Science Foundation, NSF, would also take engineers. Is that different in the US? Maybe one of you can clarify.
I think STEM, science, engineering is within mathematics and so on are in one area, and that's STEM. And the STEM is funded, as long as you do fundamental research, National Science Foundation funds. And I don't know if this would be presented, but National Science Foundation has one program where if you, let's say you are a researcher in Ethiopia and you want to do a research on your specific area. And what you can do is simply go to the National Science Foundation website, nsf.gov, and go to the research area, search your research area, find the people funded in that area. You don't have to know them. If you email to those individuals and they agree to collaborate with you, you can actually submit a grant from within Ethiopia if they are willing to support, to send you a support letter. It is easier, of course, if they are Ethiopians and they understand some of the issues. So it is easy to search for Ethiopians, or at least some of them who have some relationship with Ethiopia, but others are also willing to help. So find anyone, email them, explain what you do, and show you are interested. If they agree and support you, you can submit your proposal within Ethiopia into a different, I think the Academy of Sciences or some website. There is another website. The program is called, I think, PEER, P-E-E-R. We can provide that link. And what happens is the funding is $50,000 per year for the Ethiopian researcher. Will be, if they win funding, I think for 3 years, they will fund you $50,000 per year based on that collaboration. None of that funding will be given to the US collaborator. No, that fund is completely for the Ethiopian researcher, or it doesn't have to be Ethiopian. It could be anyone outside the US. So there are opportunities in basic research. So my suggestion is go to the nsf.gov or nsf.gov. And then if you find someone who does research in your area, contact them, try to collaborate. And that way you can actually get funded and submit. So there are opportunities almost all in all fields.
Dr. Yalam, there's one question actually that interested me, which stated that idea theft ቢኖር የሚል አለ እንትን idea ይሰረቃል በዚህ ምክንያት የሚል. I think it's a very good question, but you know, as a scientist, you submit your publication for you know, your ideas to publish, and the same goes to grants. You submit grants, but there is always some idea that come and go. So you cannot stop unless you stop submitting. There is no way to control everything that whatever is submitted. But one thing is clear. One thing is for sure. If you are the one to do that specific area project, it's only you can do. So there may be some ideas that may be taken away, but I don't think that should limit us from submitting any application. Because one thing, nobody is taking everything. But of course, you know, the concept, 20 people review your grant, and some may be much more related your own. But unfortunately, there is no ways to stop, you know, those kind of things. But at the same time, I think we need to look beyond those little things, because what you are proposing is the things that you are expert on. So my suggestion is not to bother about still your idea is going to be, you know, somebody is stealing. Eventually, you have to share your idea. That's why you have to share with your friends, your colleagues, your departments, and others that, you know, your idea by itself is not important, but even once you submit, people will see it. But I don't have any answer unless you stop submitting. You have to share with some other people.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I did respond. I wrote to that question an answer, and I'll just add to what you said. At least to organizations I submitted, there is a mechanism to control plagiarism. Nobody is going to steal your ideas, because you can follow who has been funded. Always NSF and what they do is they actually release who has been funded in what area. And you can download, open the abstract and read if your idea has been stolen or not. And if you question that your idea has been stolen by a reviewer, because it can't be the same year, definitely it must be a year later or after that, you can actually email or write or call the program officer, and they will investigate. They will investigate if that has happened. If that, for example, let's say that reviewer or that person has served as a reviewer of your proposal, they can bar them from submitting again if there is a proof that your idea has been stolen and the person has been harsher than normal in their review. But now what I want you to understand is, what is the risk of an expert who serves as a referee and a panel for NSF what is the risk of actually finding NSA finding out of that person plagiarism or being accused of it? These are people at the top of their science game and career. They don't want to risk anything like that. And most of them are able to actually propose and write ideas. These are experts in their field. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it may happen 1 in a million. So you're not going to, there is no way to even think about this. What you should worry about is, do I have a great idea? How do I present it? How do I defend an idea without me being present to defend it? Because what you are writing is an idea and you are not there to defend that idea when others are questioning it. So that's basically, you are answering all the questions they are raising. But I assure you, your ideas are not going to come from the sky. You are going to base it on published literature, which others have worked on. So it is simply a newer version of something that others have done. So I wouldn't worry about those issues at this level, honestly. And there is always a mechanism to, I know there is bias. A good idea may not be funded because of a number of reasons. There is very good evidence on that. But if you try hard, you will get funded, and I wouldn't worry about that.
Yolam, and the jaw ከፍ ያለው ዳኛውና እንደው ለለውጥ የሚያክል በድምጽ ደግሞ ከተሳታፊዎች ሰምተን ጊዜ ካለ በነገራችን ላይ ጥያቄዎቹ መብዛታቸው ጥሩ ነው። ምናልባት ነገ ሰፋ ያለ ጊዜ ልናረግ እንችላለን ለውይይቱ እና እንዲያውም ሁለት ሰዎች አወጣዋል። እስኪ ብታስተናግዳቸው ከተቻለ ሰጀስሽን።
ማን ነው ሆስቱ? አሁን ተስፋዬ መሰልከኝ። Can you give them access?
ጃቸውል ፓርቲሲፓንት የሚለው
ልክ ነው ያያያቸው
አቴንዲስ የሚላለና ከፍ ያለው
ዳኛው እና
ሁለቱ ከፍ ያለው ናቸው። አንደኛው ያለው ጌታውን ነው። ከፍ ያለው ያለው ጌታውና በተሰጣቸው ብንሰማ ደስ ይለኛል ከነሱ።
allow to talk
ጌታውን ገብሬም እንግዳው ጊዜ ካላቸው ኦኬ ጌታውን ገብሬም አንስቶ ነበረ።
I'm trying to find
let me do that. I can actually allow to talk ከፍ ያለው okay
ከፍ ያለው ተፈቀድክለት?
I just said allow, but let me see more.
I can now see him.
Mute ላይ ነው ግን ከፍ ያለው ዳኛው mute ላይ ነው። ሚዩታችሁን አንሱ።
Okay, let me open
ማን ነው ሚዩት ያርጋ? አሁን ከፍ
ያለው is allowed. I just allowed him.
Okay.
already ተመልሶልኛል እኔ thank you.
Okay. ሁለተኛው ማን ነው? አያሌው ጌታሁን ከፍ ያለው አያሌው ጌታሁን መናገር ከፈለክ ቀጥል። ግን
ተመልሷል። እኔ ተመልሷል ያልኩት ነኝ።
ሚት አድርጎ መልሰ ሚት አድርጎ የራስህን አድርግ። ከፍ ያለው
ከሆነ አበባውን ልክፈትለት። go ahead አበባው። አበባው ትሰማለህ መቀጠል ከቻልክ።
አይ በቃ አልቻለም። እንግዳው ሰዓቱ እየሄደ ስለሆነ
የቀረ ጥያቄ ካለ ጨርሰውና
give me a second. I think there was a question on I think difference between development research and I think development grant and research grant. This was asked by Shimelis Mohammed. What's the difference between development grant and the research grant? That's a question if you want to.
Is Daniel there? Daniel
ከፍ ያለው አያሌው ሚዩት አድርገው። ሚዩት ስላልሆነ አሁን የድምጽ ይሰማል። ከፍ ያለው አያሌው ፐርፌክት ሶሪ go ahead.
Daniel ካለ ዳንኤል maybe
ዳንኤል ወጣ። I have to leave the text ጻፈው።
okay
ቅድም በቻቱ ላይ ለመመለስ ሞክሬያለሁ። ፕሪንሲፕሎቹ እኮ በአብዛኛው ተመሳሳይ ናቸው። ግራንት ራይቲንግ በአብዛኛው ግን ለኔ ትልቁ ቅድም ተስፋዬም መጀመሪያ ብሎታል የፈንዲንግ ኤጀንሲውን ጋይዳንስ መከተል ነው። ለምሳሌ ዴቨሎፕመንታል ግራንት መስጠት የሚፈልግ ፈንዲንግ ኤጀንሲ እና ሪሰርች ግራንት የተለመደው ይሄን አይነቱ ትንሽ ይለያያሉ አቀራረብም፣ ግን ትልቁን ፒክቸር ካየ ነው ራሽናሉ፣ ባክግራውንዱ፣ ሜቶዶሎጂው፣ ሲግኒፊካንሱ፣ ኢምፓክት እነኚህ ኮመን ናቸው። ስለዚህ እኔም ብዬ ነበር የመለስኩለት ቢግ ፒክቸሩን ካየ ነው ብዙ ተመሳሳይነት አላቸው። አንዳንድ ደግሞ ስፔሲፊክ የሆኑ ነገሮች ፊቸሮች ይኖራሉ። እነሱን ማወቅ የሚቻለው ኮል ፎር ፕሮፖዛሉን በደንብ በማየት በማንበብ ላይም ባላይም በማንበብ እና ምን እንደሚፈለገው በመመለስ ነው የሚል ነበር የመለስኩለት። መጨመር የሚፈልግ ካለ ተስፋዬ ወይንም ይያለም?
Yeah, let me add a little more. I think that's right. ጥሩ ያልከው በጣም ተገቢ ነው። ከዛ በተጨማሪ እኔ የምጨምረው ምንድነው research you have a specific hypothesis to test. Development ግን ሶሳይታል የሆነ ኢንክሪመንታል የሆነ ቼንጅ የምታመጣው ነገር ኢሚዲየት ሃይፖቴሲስ ላይኖርህ ይችላል። ግን በሪሰርች በአብዛኛው በቤዚክ ሆነ ሪሰርቾች you have something in mind to achieve at certain point that you can test. Development ግን ኢንክሪመንታል የሆነ ሶሳይቲ ሌቭል እሱን ኢቫሉዌት አድርገህ የምታገኘው ውጤቱ it may be long term, immediate በ5 ዓመት ማታመጣው ሊሆን ይችላል እና it's all the way you frame it in the grant writing. What are funders ለምሳሌ አንዳንድ ፈንዲንጎች እዚህ አሁን racial difference ካለ በምንድን ነው ቤዚክ ፋውንዴሽናል የሆነ ሶሳይታል ኮሚኒቲ ዴቨሎፕመንታል የሆኑ አሉ። እነሱ ኢሚዲየት መልስ የላቸው ግን እንደ ለኮሚኒቲው ለሶሳይቲው ሎንግ ተርም ኢምፓክትፉል ሊሆኑ ይችላል እና it's the way you frame at the and based on the funders. እሱን ለመጨመር
Thank you.
Yeah, I just posted the link for the peer, the one that I just indicated, the NSF, where you can apply partnership for enhanced engagement in research. That is the most important part for, I think, to start with for young researchers from Ethiopia. So I just posted it on the chat area so they can have it. Okay, let me see the other question I saw was there is a simple question that says, can you explain between the difference writing a thesis and writing a grant proposal? What is the difference? And another one says, can we actually basically demand the funding agencies to give us the call? Let's say because it takes a year to write, can I have and can I require or demand this to receive the call a year ahead? And normally my answer is you cannot demand anything. They have the money, and what you need to do is follow the guideline and submit your proposal. So as far as I know, they will release it when they are ready, and you have to actually receive it and plan according to their deadline. You cannot give them a deadline. And they are very strict. If they say on this day 5 p.m., the computer closes at 5 p.m. So there is no negotiation after that. So I don't think that's possible. Now, in terms of thesis and grant writing or proposals, anybody who wants to chip in on this?
I will try. I will start actually from the.
Go ahead.
Thesis versus research grant proposal. Yes, both of them entail doing research. And doing research means there are key elements or components that should be incorporated into the research. What is the question we're trying to address? Why is it important? What do we know about that question? Because it's very unlikely that someone comes up just with a completely new idea that has never been done before. I'm not saying it will never happen, but unlikely. Most of us build on other work. So we have to have a clear idea of what is known and what remains to be explored. What are the gaps? And then you have to have a good overarching objectives goal, specific aims, appropriate methodology, approaches, and so on. So if you think up from that perspective, both thesis and grant proposal are similar. However, both the way we deliver them, the presentation, as well as the framing, and also in terms of, they depend on, for example, funding agency, instructions, and so on. Even theses vary from university to university, from department to department. So the big picture is similar. The actual implementation and following guidelines could be different. So to me, that's how I see those. The similarities to me more than the differences in terms of the science part. I don't know if Tess, you want to add?
No, that's really a good response. Thesis is a free flow. You convince your mentors, maybe two, three people. Grant, you are convincing, and with achievable goals and deliverables. And thesis, the impact. It's more of how your career, about your science. It's not about the impact. That it has a different focus in my view, and I think the Professor Joseph tomorrow will go through the different steps. Maybe you will have more idea where is it really the grants, different component of grant is can be helpful for the thesis, or what's the relationship. We can probably talk about that in each step.
On the previous one, actually, I forgot. I wanted to say just one quick thing. Can you demand the funding agencies? Remember what Tesfaye mentioned. About 1 year is a relative term. He was thinking of those big grants. Those are large, multi-million-dollar grants. Those take time, and the funding bodies know that too. So the call will be posted way in advance to give you enough time to prepare. But that does not mean there are no times where the funding agency will give you only 3 months, not a year. But for those type of grants, the requirement is also is not as big as the other one. So they know, and they are also aware that scientists are not just writing only grants. They have other things. They teach courses. They write papers. So they take all this into account. So trust me, you don't need to go back and demand them to change it or to tell you in advance. They know that already. So I think as soon as you get that posting, start working on it, and you should have sufficient time if you start early. So I just wanted to add that to what Yonas said earlier.
Yeah, and as far as you have idea, you don't need to wait about the calls to come out. You just write your grant, and it's always easy to modify, to reshuffle things around so that you can be on time. So you don't need to start day one and then for the 3 months. Probably you have already documented everything, and then by the time you have the call, it could be 3-4 months, but you have already your homework. So it doesn't mean as a researcher, as a interested in grant, you always need to write. Idea by itself is not going to work. That's why you need to put on paper, and there's a way you can reshuffle one idea to different multiple grants. So it's just to give you a time of thinking in that perspective. You are muted, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, Makwanant raised his hand. So if you would like, I have already given you the permission to speak. So if you could unmute and speak. Makwanant, or no?
Makwanant, yeah. So you are on mute, Makwanant.
When?
It's already answered. I can jump.
Okay. Then I think we have only one, Asafa, and I think that's the last person. Probably we should. So if you want to say, ask your question?
Can you mute Makwanant in the meantime?
No. Does it take time?
Ayano ወይ ሙላት
Yeah, I see two. Ayano Asafa, Mulatu Mengiste.
ሙላት you are unmuted.
When you are unmute, when you are allowed, please unmute yourself. Mulatu, if you unmute yourself, you can talk. The same with Makwanan, the same with Kafialo. Oh no, Kafialo is.
There is another Fizum. Fizum, you are unmuted. Unmute yourself and talk.
I think there is a misunderstanding. ፈቃድ እንደተሰጣችሁ unmute ማድረግ አለባችሁ።
I just I asked them to unmute all of them. They should see it on their screen.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
እሺ አመሰግናለሁኝ። ፍጹም እባላለሁ ከባህር ዳር ዩኒቨርሲቲ ነው። ስከታተል ነበር የተሰጠውን ትምህርት። እኔ መጠየቅ የምፈልገው ምንድነው ሪሰርች ሲጻፍና ግራንት ሲጻፍ የራሳቸው ሂደቶች አላቸው። ሪሰርች የሚጻፍበት የራሱ ሂደት አለው። ግራንትን በብዛት ሲጻፍ ያ ድርጅት ወይ ደግሞ ፈንድ የሚሰጠው አካል የሚያወጣው የራሱ ክራይቴሪያ ያለና ከዚህ ቀደምም የተወሰኑ ግራንቶችን ለመጻፍ ሞክረን በተለይ ይሄ የኤራስሙስ ካፓሲቲ ቢልዲንግ ኢን ሃየር ኤዱኬሽን የሚል ከኢትዮጵያ ያሉ ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች እና ከኢሮፕ ያሉ ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በጋራ በመቀናጀት ለሶስቴ አፕላይ አድርገን ነበር እና አፕላይ ካደረግን በኋላ የተሰጠን ውጤት የመጀመሪያውን ዙር አልፈን ሁለተኛ ላይ በሚደረገው የምርጫ ሂደት ወድቃችኋል በሚል በተመሳሳይ ለሶስቴ ሳይሳካልን ቀርቷልና እዛ ላይ እስቲ ሜቢ በምን አይነት ሂደት ብንሄድ ነው ለወደፊት ማሸነፍ ምንችለው? በእናንተ በኩልስ እንደዛ አይነት ግራንቶች ላይ ስፔሲፊክ ሆኖ እገዛ የሚደረግልን ከሆነ የሚል ጥያቄ ለመጠየቅ ነው። አመሰግናለሁ። ጨርሻለሁ።
Anyone who wants to chip in or እኔ እንግዲህ የኢራስመስ ምንደስና እኔም ማቀው ቤልጅየም በተመለከተ የነበረውን ስራ ስለማስታውስ ነው። አብረ ለመስራት ስትሞክር ዋናው ነገር ፕሮፖዛል ጽፈ መልሳቸው የምትፈልገው ካልሆነ መጠየቅ የሚገባው ምንድነው ድክመታችን ምንድነው ብሎ የሪቪወሮቹን ኮሜንት ለመቀበል መሞከር ወሳኝ ነው። ምናልባት የሲምፕል ሚስተካከል ነገር ሊሆን ይችላል ወይም ፕሪሊሚናሪ ዴታ መሰራት ያለበት ነገር ሊኖር ይችላል። ለምን ባጭሩ የተከለከላችሁበት ምክንያቱ ምንድነው የሚለው ማወቅ ያስፈልጋል። አለበለዚያ ተመልሶ መሄዱ ምንም የሚጠቅመው ነገር የለም እና አንዱ እሱ ነው። ሌላው አስተካክላችሁ ሄዳችሁም ቢሆን ስላስተካክልን እናገኛለን ብሎ ማሰብ ስተት ነው። በትክክል ምንድነው አድረስ ማድረግ ያለብን ድክመታችን ምንድነው እንዴት ነው ፕሮፖዛሉን የምናጠነክረው ብሎ አስቦ መመለስ ነው እንጂ ማዘጋጀትና መስተካከል ነው እንጂ እሱም ሆኖ የሚቀጥለው ፓናል ወይ የሚቀጥለው ያንን ሪቪው የሚያደርገው ግሩፕ ሌላ ሰዎች ሊሆኑ ይችላሉ አምና የነበሩት አይደሉም። ስለዚህ የተወሰነ ያምና የተሰጠውን ኮሜንትና የናንተን መልስ ያያሉ። ሆኖም ግን የራሳቸው አስተያየት ሊኖራቸው ይችላል የራሳቸው አመለካከት ሊኖራቸው ይችላል። ስለዚህ ተጨማሪ ኮሜንት ሊመጣ ይችላል። ሆኖም ግን ምን ሊባል ይችላል ከተባለው አሁን ካየነው ድክመቱ ምንድነው ምን ማስተካከል አለብን ይሄን ካሉስ ተጨማሪ ምን ሊሉ ይችላሉ የሚለውን አይቶ ተዘጋጅቶ መሄድ ነው የሚያስፈልገው። ሌላው የሳት ነው የነሱ በአጠቃላይ ላይን ባይ ላይን የሚፈልጉትን ነገር did we actually achieve those goals ምንድነው ያ ኦርጋናይዜሽን የሚፈልገው ምን አይነት ኮላቦሬሽን ነው ማክሲመም እነሱ ከሚሉት በተቻለ መጠን ዘላችሁ ኢምፓክቱ ሊደርስ የሚያስችል ስራ ይዛችሁ ብትሄዱ ልትሞክሩ ትችላላችሁ ባይነኝ ግን የሪቪውርስ ኮሜንት ተሰጥቷችኋል ወይስ አልተሰጣችሁ ምን የመጀመሪያው ጥያቄ ነው
ዮሐን ምናልባት እዛ ላይ መጨመር ከፈቀድክልኝ
go ahead
ኦኬ ተስፋዬ ነኝ ሰላም ለሁላችሁም ያዳመጥኩ ነበር ፕሬዘንቴሽኖችን በሙሉ ያው እኔ ጀርመን ስላለሁኝ ሪሰርች ተቋም ውስጥ በሆነም በኤራዝሙስ ተሳታፊ አይደለንም እኛ ከዩኒቨርሲቲዎች ጋር የሚደረግ ስለሆነ ማለት ነውና የዩሮፒያን የሪቪው ፕሮሰሱ ልክ አሁን ይዋለም እንዳለው ነው የተለያዩ ሌቭሎች አሏቸው ስቴጅ 1 ስቴጅ 2 እና ፋይናል ስቴጅ የሚባል ነገር አለ ፕሪሊሚናሪ ስክሪኒንጎች አሉ በተለያየ ሌቭል ላይ ግን መጨረሻ ላይ ኳሊፋይድ አይደላችሁም ስትባሉ የሚሰጣችሁ መልስ አለ የሪቪውሮች ኮሜንት ልክ ፔፐርስ ሪቪው ሲደረግ እንደሚሰጠው ማለት ነው አንደኛ እሱን የሪቪውር ኮሜንት አግኝተሃል ወይ ምክንያቱም ቲሙን ሊድ ያደርግ የነበረ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ፕሮፌሰር ነው ያንን ኖርማሊ የሚያገኘውና እሱን ለእናንተ ሼር አድርጓችኋል ወይ እዛ ውስጥ ያሉት ክሪቲካል ጥያቄዎች ምንድናቸው ሁለተኛ ቲሙን በተመለከተ የሪሰርች ቲሙ ወይም የኤራዝሙስ በመካፈል በመታረቅበት ጊዜ ቲሙ ውስጥ ያሉት ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች እና እዛ ውስጥ ኢንቮልቭድ የሆኑት ፕሮፌሰሮች ምናልባት ነገ የተወሰኑ ፖይንቶች ልነግራችሁ ይችላሉ ቲም ቢልዲንግ ላይ እነሱ ምን ያህል ኢንፍሉዌንሻል ናቸው ምን ያህል ኢምፓክት አላቸው ዩኒቨርሲቲዎቹ ምን ያህል ኮምፒቲቲቭ ናቸው ከሌሎች ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች ጋር እናንተ ፓርትነር የሆነችሁበት የሚለው ጥያቄ ሌላው ትልቁ ጥያቄ እነሱን አድሬስ ማድረጉ ሁለቱን አድሬስ ካደረክ ሰክሰሱን ማሻሻል ይችላል ያስባለሁ ጨርሻለሁ
Thank you Tesfaye sorry መግባትህንም አላየሁም ለዛ ነው ይቅርታ ሌላ የሚጨምር ሰው ካለ
እንደን ከለላ I think ሰዓታችንም እየሄደ ስለሆነ ሰው እንትን እንዳይል
አዎ ደሞ ብዙዎቹ actually አሳጥራችሁ 5 ቢያልቅልን በማለት ቢሮ ነው ኢንተርኔታችን እያሉ ስለነበር አዎ ተገቢ ነው ስለዚህ ለዛሬው ወደ ተስፋዬ ለመልስ እንግዲህ አድሬስ አድርገውና ብትዘጋው ጥሩ ነው
I think still ብዙ ሰው አለ ይሄ የሚያሳየው በጣም ኢንተረስት እንዳለ ነው እኛም በጣም ጥሩ ኢነርጂ ነው የሆነ እንደዚህ ሰው ኢንተረስት በማደሩ በጣም በውሏችን ደስተኛ ነን እስካሁን ግን የዛሬው ኢንትሮዳክተሪ ነው ነገ ደግሞ ከዚህ የበለጠ ፕሮግራም የተዘጋጀው በተለይ የግራንት ሜካኒዝም ኮምፖነንት ኦፍ each grant component step by step ስለሚሆን በተቻለ ሁላችሁም ያላችሁም ያልሰሙትንም ብትነግሯቸው በጣም ሲዝንድ በሆነ በጥሩ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ፈርስት ሃንድ ወርልድ ክላስ በሆነ ጓደኛችን እዚህ ጆሴፍ የሚቀርብ ነው ከዛ ተስፋዬ ወደ ቲም ቢልዲንግ እንዳነሳው በሱ ይቀጥላል
ሜቢ ካላስቸገርኩ አንዴ ብገባ
ኦኬ
ለአንድ ደቂቃ አስተያየት ልስጥ አሁን በተሰጠበት ላይ
ኦኬ አጠራ አድርገህ ያው ብዙ ሰው እንትን
እሺ የኛ አፕላይ ያረግነው 6 የኢትዮጵያ ዩኒቨርሲቲዎችና 4 ከዩሮፕ ከተርኪ ከግሪክ እና ከሮማኒያ የተወከሉ ፓርትነሮች አንድ ላይ አጠቃላይ 10 ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች ነንና ምላሽ ሰጥተውናል ለሶስት ተከታታይ ጊዜ ነው አፕላይ ያረግነው ለሶስቱም ተከታታይ ጊዜ አፕላይ ያረግንበትን ምላሽ ሰጥተውናል እንደውም ሶስተኛ ላይ የሰጡን ምላሽ ትክክል አይደለም ብለን ሌጋል ሬሜዲስ ወይም ደግሞ ቅሬታ አቅርበን በዛ ላይ ምላሽ ለሁለተኛ ጊዜ የሰጡበት ሂደት ነው ያለውና ዲቴል እነሱ ያሉንን በተደጋጋሚ ያስተካከልን ብንልክም ሰክሰስፉል ልንሆን አልቻልንም ምክንያቱም እንደውም ምን አሰብን ይሄ ራስሙስ የሚባለው አፍሪካን ማገዝ የሚፈልግ ተቋም አይደለም የሚል ሴንስ ነው ያዝነው ዳታውን ስናይ ከዚህ ቀደም በኢራስሙስ ካፓሲቲ ቢልዲንግ ኢን ሃየር ኤዱኬሽን እንደ አፍሪካ ያሸነፈ ተቋም የለም እኛም ለመጀመሪያ ጊዜ ነው ባህር ዳር ዩኒቨርሲቲ ራሱን ወክሎ ሌሎቹን ከስሮ ፓርትነር ያረጋ አፕላይ ያረጋውና የሚጎለን ነገር ያለ ብዬ አላስብም ያው ላይጠፋ ይችላል ግን በእናንተ በኩል ሜቢ እነዚህን ዶክመንቶችም ልከን አይታችሁ ሜቢ ዶክመንቱን መላክ ይችላልው በኢሜል አይታችሁ ክፍተቶችንም ሚቻል ከሆነ እገዛ ብታረጉልን በጣም በተደጋጋሚ ለ3 አመት የለፋንበት ዶክመንት በእጃችን ስላለ ትንሽ ቴክኒካል ኬዞች የሚጎሉት ከሆነ ብታግዙን የሚል አስተያየት አለኝ እሺ አመሰግናለሁ
ያ በጣም ጥሩ ነው አይ ቲንክ የተናገርከው ጥሩ ነው ያለው ዶክመንት በተለይ ሪቪወሮች ያሉትን እናንተ እንዴት ሪስፖንድ እንዴት አድሬስ እንዳረጋችሁ እሱም ብናይ ያለው ሰው እዚህ ኤክስፐሪንስ በዛ ላይ የሰራ ነው ስለዚህ ኩዊክሊ አይተን መመለስ እንችላለን እና በሱ አይ ቲንክ ጥሩ ነገር ነው የሰራችሁት ሌላው ነገር ግን በመስራታችሁ ደስተኛ መሆን ነው እንጂ ስለማይሰጡ ነው ስላልፈለጉን ነው የሚለው አይዲያ ውስጥ ከገባችሁ ሌላ መለወጥ አይመጣም ስለዚህ you need to be really በመሞከር ነው ውጤት የሚመጣው ስለዚህ ለወደፊት ለበለጠ ለመስራት መትጋት ነው እና ግን ሐሳብ ጥሩ ነው
እንዴት ነገር ልጨምር እዚህ ላይ
ኢሜይልም ሼር ብታረጉን ለመላክ እንዲመቸን ሜቢ
ሶስት ነገር እንዲያውም ኢሜይል ለተባለው አይ ቲንክ የሁላችንም እዚህ የምንሳተፈው ኢሜይል ቢላክላቸው ጥሩ ነው ከዶክመንቶቹ ጋር በየግልም ጥያቄ ሊኖራቸው ይችላል እንደያቀረብነው በግሩፕ አፕሮች ሊያደርጉን ስለሚችሉ ኢሜይላችን ቢኖረው እሱ ጥሩ ነው ሁለተኛው አሁን ብንልክላችሁና ትንሽ ፊድባክ ብትሰጡን ለተባለው በጣም ደስ ይለናል ካሁን በፊትም ትንሽ እየሞከርን ነበር ግን ማለት የምፈልገው እኛም አድርገን ፊድባክ መስጠተን ልክ የራሳችን ግራንት ሪጀክትድ እንደሚደረገው 100% ይሆናል ማለት አለ ሪጀክትድ ልንሆን እንችላለን ይሄ ላይፍ ኦፍ ሪሰርቸር ይሄ ነው ፔፐር ልከን ፔፐር ሪጀክት ይደረጋል ግራንት ልከን ግራንት ሪጀክት ይደረጋል ቅድም ተስፋዬ ብሎታል never give up we never give up ደግሞ የተጻፈ ነገር ቤት አያጣ ፔፐር የሚሆን ፔፐር ጽፌ ልኬው 2-3 ጊዜ ሪጀክትድ ቢሆን አንድ ወቅት ላይ ግን የሆነ ጆርናል ላይ ይወጣል እንትም ግራንትም ይሄ ነው ኢንቨስትመንቱ እንደ ጠፋ አይደለም የሚቆጠረውና ኢሜይላችን ይኖራችኋል ደስ ይለናል ፊድባክ መስጠት ፊድባክ ሰጥተንም ግን ላናገኝ እንችላለን ግን ተስፋ አንቆርጥ እንደዛ ብዬ ለመጨመር ነው ታንክ ዩ
በጣም ጥሩ ኮንክሉዥን ነው እና በዚህ የዛሬውን እንዘጋለን ሁላችሁንም እናመሰግናለን እንግዲህ ነገ ደግሞ ቀዳሜ ነው አይ ነው ግን ሁላችንም ተገናኝተን እንማማርበት ጊዜ ይሆናል በቸሪክ ጠመን ነው ማለት እንግዲህ ተጨማሪ ካለለ ከዩአለም
መልካም ቀን ነው ማለት ነው መልካም ምሽት ለተሳተፉት
እሺ
ሁላችሁም ሰላም
ሁላችሁም እንግዲህ ቸሪክ ጠመን
አሜን
እሺ እናመሰግናለን መልካም ጊዜ
እሺ